There's some cream down there?
Did she get cream?
Walter, ready? All right, we'll resume our city council budget meeting, and please let the record reflect, Attorney Don Nguyen was here at what time? I don't know, you were here on, okay, at the beginning of the meeting. All right, Mr. Manager?
All right, Madam Chair and members of the board, this item is a continuation from previous conversations we had with respect to the fiscal year 2019, 2020 budget.
Can you pull your mic up? I don't think it's really, no.
This agenda would consist of a budget overview, city overview, and then the department directors will speak more specifically about significant budget changes, talk about some objectives that they have in their fiscal year 2019-20 budget, and then we will conclude with the budget calendar. This is a slide that we showed to the board previously that reflects the economic downturn that the city of Riviera Beach experienced starting in 2008, and then ultimately seeing the city see taxable value grow in 2015, where we saw a 35% growth, but throughout these years, there was significant revenue that was lost as it relates to taxable value growth, and that was the recession, the Great Recession. There was some measures the city did have to take in order to maintain existing operations, but things on the economic side are starting to improve as far as the market conditions. Now, we will show you another slide that shows that there is some slowdowns in some of the major revenue streams for the city, and this is the next slide. And to speak on more specificity, you can see that our permits, fees, and licensing has gone down about 25%, so a reduction of $532,000. The largest revenue stream for the city is obviously your ad valorem revenue, so you collect or anticipated to collect in fiscal year 2019, 2020, approximately $45 million, which is a change and an increase about $2.9 million. But when we get down to more specifics here, your increase realistically is $2.7 million because some of your large revenue streams are going down significantly, and that's what gives us some pause with respect to economic conditions slowing down. And anytime you find yourselves in a situation where you go through a recession and the economy rebounds, it's always between 58 to maybe 68 months that you see that there is a potentiality for the economy to be impacted locally. And since we rely so heavily upon property tax revenue, it is even that much more challenging for us as a city to be able to rebound. If I can just go back to the previous slide, all of us know that the recession started in 2008, but the way in which the city collects revenue, we feel it basically a year later. So in order for us to recover, it takes a year longer, and that's the challenge when you're so reliant on ad valorem revenue. When you look at our expenditures, obviously Florida state statutes requires us to have a balanced budget, and our expenditures and our revenues for the sake of the budget that is in front of you this evening is a balanced budget. Now, there is another discussion that we will have with the board on Monday that will speak specifically to the health insurance program, that there are some things here that we will show you that are unfunded at this moment, but funding will be available for certain things to add back into the budget, but not as much as we had anticipated, depending on what plan the board selects as far as health insurance. Depends on what programs or initiatives we can place back into the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget.
Mr. Evans,
Yes, sir.
could you give some details on why we have a negative for percentage change for permitting and for fines?
The change is probably more like specific to what the slowdowns that we're seeing, and it's probably contingent on where we were projecting economic growth and those types of things, and we've reduced what those projections are, probably based on real-time numbers that we're seeing as it relates to permitting and fees and fines and those types of things.
Do we have, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I apologize.
Go ahead.
Do we have actual numbers? Because I see these were adopted numbers for 2018, 2019. Do we have actual numbers as well?
You will get we have actual numbers, but you won't get, in essence, audited numbers until the audit is completed. But we do have year-to-date actuals. And we can, Mr. Sherman can pull that information up here shortly.
Because we're setting our expectations and our proposed numbers, but I don't know actually what our tax revenue was. So this 42,000 was kind of the budgeted number. So what was the actual collected amount? I'm sorry, 42 million.
With property tax revenue, it's profoundly different than your other revenue streams because we budget to collect around 95%. Statutorily, we collect that because if someone does not pay their taxes, a tax certificate is sold. And so that's the most concrete way for municipal entities to collect revenue. And that's why you've even seen some municipalities look to put their sanitation levies or other bills on the tax bill for the purposes the collection rate is exponentially higher versus your others. You don't collect at the same type of rate, but
And where does that revenue go after it's collected if it's a higher amount? So for example, if we collect a larger than that 95%, where does that additional revenue go?
if you don't budget for, then it runs into your fund balance. That's money that would go into the general fund, into fund balance, if you collect over that 95. But statutorily, you can only budget for that number. So even though you may collect more, you cannot budget for more. That's the max that you can, because it's still volatile, has a little bit of volatility to it.
And that fund balance is what we've increased, where we're at about 180 days of operating. So every time that we collect a little bit more, then we're adding that to our fund balance.
Right, and also, it's also contemplated that your departments do not expend their entire budget. So
Yep.
it's also anticipated that a portion, whether it's 2 to 4%, would be turned back to the general fund or those other funds. So that's where you see the fund balance growth in some of the departments, or in some of the funds.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The next slide speaks to the revenue sources and shows that 59%, the largest revenue stream for the city, clearly is property tax revenue. But one of the things that I think is germane to the conversation is that number and our reliance on property tax revenue has shifted from, I believe in 2017, that number was maybe 55 to 56%. So the revenue streams and what we utilize our revenue for, you're seeing that becomes a larger portion of the revenue collection. Now, we want to make sure that we continuously diversify our revenue streams, because in the event we become so reliant on property tax that in the slight chance that we get an economic downturn and the housing market is impacted and it gets a cold, we really get the flu. So it's really important that every opportunity we have to diversify our revenue stream, to become less reliant on ad valorem revenue, the better off we are. So when we had conversations with the board about the potentiality of looking at a fire assessment, that provides an opportunity to take some of the strain off of the general fund, which it would be your most challenged fund in the event you have an economic downturn, as it's derived by property values. The other side of it is, you heard from your lobbyists that Tallahassee is always trying to do things to preempt the way in which local governments operate and manage their resources. So if there's another exemption that happens with respect to an additional homestead or what have you, or an additional exemption for X, Y, and Z, that impacts your revenue that you're collected on the property tax side. When we look at where the money is expended, you can see that most of the cost that the city derives from the general fund is personnel-related. So you have $43 million is personnel-related costs, which is 56% of the overall budget that the city has. So a large portion of the expenditures is personnel, and then you can look at 7%, and we had the conversation with the board about health insurance, that health, dental, and life, that is your largest, probably largest single line item in the budget. It's a significant chunk of that pie, and so when we look to make tweaks and modifications, it's with the understanding to really try to control the cost and how they impact the overall expenditures throughout the city. You have professional services, you have monies that are set aside for debt service. You also put aside, per the charter, 1% in your major disaster fund. In previous years, we talked about the opportunity to discuss utilizing that money for the purposes of assisting and offsetting some of the costs for emergency services. So whether it's the construction of a new fire station or investment in apparatus, we would never encourage the board to look at utilizing it for reoccurring items, but one-time purchases and those types of things, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, the number that from your $45 million that you're anticipated to collect, almost $600,000 annually goes into that account. And when we ask the insurance company, what's the most exposure as a city that we can have in the event of a hurricane or an incident or an accident, you're looking at roughly about $3 million would be the most exposure. Well, right now, what is the account balance in that account, Mr. Chairman?
About $5.5 million.
About $5.5 million. So you do have enough sitting in that account that it would not adversely impact you in the event that you wanted to utilize it for the purchases of a tangible asset to assist in the public service operation. That's also one of the things that kicks up your fund balance high as well, is because you have that as a restricted funding source and a mechanism that sits in there. So that's something that's stipulated per charter as well.
Madam Chair, by what means then can we use it? Are you saying that we can use it if we vote to?
You can use it for emergency services. You can
Yeah,
use
okay.
it pretty much for public safety needs.
Okay.
And it would be the recommendation of staff to look at it from a standpoint, if for whatever reason you wanted to say the $2 million over the $3 million, we wanted to pledge a certain portion of that for the reconstruction of a fire station or what have you, or the hardening of a structure to protect us from a hurricane. Those are the types of purchases that would be qualified to utilize that revenue stream versus, other revenue streams. So it's an opportunity in the event the board chooses ever to go that way.
Just to follow up, is that money that we could, in some future plan, use for undergrounding some of our utilities?
That may be a hard push, even though there is documentation and information that says it makes you it's quicker for you to recover as a community, it makes you more resilient as far as your electric utilities and those types of things. But I think it would be, thank you, sir. I think it would be a stretch that I would probably encourage us to maybe stay away from that, because it would be a hard, needle to thread, because it's also seen as a cosmetic improvement and something to address, visual blight and those issues. But something is certainly, as a fire station, you can use that money for. Going into the city overview, this is the organization chart. Obviously, at the top of the organization chart is the citizens of Riviera Beach, and then the elected body, and then city administration and the respective departments that are under those categories. We've broken it up into administration, public safety, infrastructure, and culture and recreation. This was a slide that was previously shared with the board, and I think it's important to, again, put this in front of the public, because it shows that the city of Riviera Beach is anticipated to collect $45 million in property tax revenue, which is 59% of the revenue that the city collects. And when you look at just your public safety departments and you were just to add those two departments in, you're at a situation where you're already at $33 million, not accounting for public works, recreation, general administration, information technology. So when we had the earlier presentation to show that when somebody gets their tax bill, only 38% of that revenue of the entire tax bill comes to the city, and we provide all these different types of services. So when we have the conversations with the board about fees for services or how do we look to offset some of those costs, one of the conversations that we will have later on is even looking at the parking opportunities that we have. Those are all different ways to look to diversify the funding for the city, because obviously if we were to rely exclusively on property tax revenue, we wouldn't be able to fund some essential public safety services and some other services in the city. Our scope would be very limited. At this particular point, we're going to get into the department presentations, and the first department that we'll be presenting is the police department, and followed by the fire department. And so, Police Chief Spencer Rozier.
Hello, good evening. Hi, Spencer Rozier, the interim chief of police for the Riviera Beach Police Department. As you can see, this is our organizational chart here, which has our support side and our operations side. And under our support side, you have the school resource officers, our evidence unit, training, and emergency communications. And I think we might have left off our records unit, unless it was meant to be under one of these categories. But on the operations side is our, what we call our east side district and our west side district. The west side district is everything west of PBO, the railroad tracks, and everything east of that is our east side district, all the way to Singer Island. And down below it is our special operations unit, which incorporates our investigations, traffic units, and all the other specialized units that come under that division. So. Okay. Oh, okay, here's our departmental overview. Under budget modifications, you see that we added one part-time crossing guard position, which is funded. And under this budget year, we have 3 vacant sergeant positions that's going unfunded this year. And we requested 2 communication supervisors position, which are unfunded, and there may be one communication position and a part-time position there. And it also mentions our the expansions of the ShotSpotter system, which is $125,000 unfunded.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What is that? What is the ShotSpotter?
ShotSpotter, that's our gunshot detection system, which it's very beneficial because it allows us to know exactly when gunshots have been fired in a certain area, so we're not waiting on someone to give us a call and say they think they heard gunshots in a certain area. The ShotSpotter system activates and it lets us know exactly where those gunshots came from, so officers can respond immediately to that area and try to address the situation and hopefully intervene or make an arrest or be there to help anybody who have been injured by gunshots.
So for the expansion, is that placing it in other areas of the city, or you're getting more equipment?
That's really the existing system. We started out with one area, which was what we call our PSA 21, which is pretty much the Monroe Heights area and all that area leading towards Silver Beach Road. That's where we first started out with the ShotSpotter system, but we later expanded the system to other parts of the city. So that $125,000 allows us to continue that system, and right now it's going unfunded.
Madam Chair, just as a point of clarity as well, is it was listed as an expansion because it wasn't part of the original proposal that when we did deploy the ShotSpotter technology. It was a deployment that allowed for us to partner up with the Port of Palm Beach that assisted in funding it. We've been provided information that that funding is no longer going to be available for us at this particular moment. So it's going to be something that the city would have to incur the cost. So it's unfunded for the purposes of this exercise with the board because we didn't receive an additional safety grant, but it is something that we are looking to put back for the purposes of making sure there's uniformity and consistency, because that technology is so critical, and it actually allows for us to cover the Peanut Island area as well as the sandbar where people congregate on the weekends. We can be able to have real-time information. So it's certainly an important element that assists public safety. So it's something that we would end up bringing back. But as it stands right now, based on where we didn't know where we were going with health insurance, that's why it's not funded.
Okay.
Madam
Your
Chair.
microphone was working much better when Walter put it on the left side, right there.
Okay.
Yep, right there. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question was going to be about funding because remember I think got kicked off by the port. But, to my understanding, isn't there a lot of grant application opportunities through Homeland Security and DOJ for this kind of equipment and technology?
Yes, sir. There is a lot of grant funding that's available, and we will pursue that opportunity with the port. We had conversations with them as well as them assisting us in the process. But for the sake of ensuring that there's no lapse in service and those types of things, we're going to move forward accordingly. And hopefully it's something that, as a grant, we can be reimbursed for the costs associated with maintaining the existing service that we have now.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Mr. Evans, do we have a permanent grant writer with the city?
We don't have one as of yet, but
Okay.
we have a plan for a
Salary.
position that will assist in managing some of the grant functions for the city.
Would that be best to actually have a grant writer? Because I know some of our divisions have had grant writers that they've reached out, I think Fire and a few other ones that I've spoken with. But would it be best to have one for the city and then have individuals working underneath them to specialize on departments? Or should each department look at it possibly bringing in something under them?
We've had, I believe, in the past, a contractual arrangement with a firm that managed the grant writing component to be able to decipher what's the best option. We would still need to look into it, but it's certainly something that we can do some research on to provide some options and what the cost for a grant writer is, and then what the grant management process and how would we go ahead and manage that position and where that position would be housed. Because in previous entities that I've worked is, they've also said that the grant writer needed to make 3 or 4 times what their salary is to justify the position in subsequent years. So, if we were to put a process in place that said we wanted a grant writer, and if you make X, we anticipate you to bring in X amount of dollars in revenue, that's something that we can certainly consider if that's the pleasure of the board.
Yeah, I would love to see just kind of a comparison between bringing in a salaried employee versus a consultant firm coming in, because I know it's going to keep our budget or our salaries down lower, but the amount that they're taking, anywhere between 5 and 25% of that grant, could actually fund the entire department. So,
All right.
Is there any questions for the chief?
yes, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
The few things that I wanted to take a look at, Chief, would be recap. Have we addressed possibly looking into any funding or support for recap within this budget term?
Yeah, it's a program we just got started not too long ago, and that program will need funding as it continues, because right now it's being ran by Dr. Marshall and his group of volunteers, so it's
Okay.
mainly a volunteer program at this
Right.
point.
So is it within this current budget, this fiscal year? Have we budgeted that to fall, that it's not going to be a volunteer this year, or what are we doing?
No, Basically, Dr. Marshall is leading it and is, has a dual role with his victim advocate program, and it's kind of an extension of that program right now.
Okay, all right, I'm coming back to that. And then also, part-time detective, we spoke about the other night with possibly having someone that can take a look at, providing some support for our residents and our corporations in recouping personal property.
Right.
So that was something that I wanted to actually take a look at as well, with creating an additional position for that, or actually funding a position for that.
And maybe I can let the city manager answer that. We did request that, but at the same time, they're still evaluating budget opportunities for that position.
Gotcha.
That position, there's certain positions on here that you'll see that are listed as unfunded positions.
Yes.
But the chief and I had a conversation a couple of times with respect to that specific position and the value that position brings to the organization. So if that is something that position is not funded in the budget, it hasn't been created, but if there is the pleasure of the board to do so, we can see what available funds that we have to be able to create a paid position versus the volunteer situation that we currently have in place now.
Okay. Just for the board and my colleagues, that position has obtained in the last 5 years over $600,000 worth of product for residents from Singer Island to Cheney Brothers to mainland. So it's definitely something that I would want us to take a look at, because that's actual real property that these residents have been able to receive back to their homes. So it's something that we want to actually provide for them. And then last thing was PAL. What kind of funding do we have? Do we have any direction with the PAL program?
No, that's something that we had, you may recall or may not recall, a while back, we had a team of people, including former council members, the former mayor. They all went to Philadelphia and brought back some of the things that they were doing, and the PAL participation, I call it the PAL participation league is what we're looking for, because it also includes, you may have only certain people play sports, but if it's a participation league, you can include everybody.
Right.
I did have a conversation with the national director and got information on it, but it's a matter of being able to fund it. I think we're heading in the right direction with our school resource program and also our COP program. They're doing a lot of activities currently with the kids, with our mentoring program, our Explorer program, and other community events. We work with the Youth Empowerment Program, but at some point, because the grant is eventually going to expire on our school resource program, we may have an opportunity to combine those two units and have the resources, the manpower available to effectively run a PAL league at that time.
Okay. I know that was something we spoke about at the retreat as well, so that was something that I would like to see, and I believe some of the colleagues as well would want to see implemented into the budget.
That would be great.
Thank you,
Didn't
Madam
we
Chair.
mention about the forfeiture funds contributing to that, Mr. Evans?
We did talk about the forfeiture funds potentially being utilized for that program. We have to look at what the existing fund balance is in that fund, because it is utilized for large-scale community events, and that's what it requires per the statute to utilize the forfeiture fund. So we would have to do a deep dive to see how much monies can be set aside to establish such a program if it's the desire of the board to move in that direction.
And what about the tactical unit? I think that's still in
Yeah,
here.
and I
Or-
didn't cover I probably should have started off with covering some of the highlights of last year. And the tactical unit was a big benefit to the police department. I want to thank you, because you came and sat with us and asked us if we had a wish list, what would be on that wish list. And the tactical unit is something that we've always thought that would benefit the police department, because of course they see the patrol cars and the uniformed people riding around, and it's kind of easy to stop your activity when you see that patrol car coming down the street and everybody's in their uniform. So the tactical unit has done a great job of addressing some of our and helping reduce some of our violent crime, which has been the lowest it's been for a while. I think we were like at 13.6% reduction in our violent crime. And these men and women, they do a tremendous job of getting a lot of illegal guns and drugs off the street, and they continue to do that now. So
Okay, and that's still included in here for this upcoming budget?
it's
Is it
part of
in-
our overall
Okay.
personnel, and we have the department is currently fully staffed at this time.
Okay. Anyone else? No, any other questions regarding police before we move on? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Next department is the fire department, led by Chief Curd.
Good evening, Council. John Curd, Interim Fire Chief.
Good evening.
So basically, we have our fire department organizational chart, and currently Riviera Beach Fire Rescue is a full-service fire rescue EMS services. We have our EMS services that are stationed out of 3 of our stations, 3 ALS rescue units that provide calls for service to the city. Fire and emergency services are 4 units, 1 at each one of our 4 stations. And this year was the first year as a whole that we adopted Ocean Rescue, and we are now providing services out at the Ocean Mall and the beachfront for Ocean Rescue. You're also going to see our inspections division, and I want to introduce council to a new term because this term of inspections is very narrow. The term that we are moving towards in the fire service now is community risk reduction, and that's one of the focuses and one of the emphases we're trying to put on that particular division. It's not just inspections. A lot of it's public education, going out, health fairs. If we can educate and better prepare our community, the less dependent they'll be upon on our services. And while we're not trying to diminish what it is we do, we think it's the right thing to do for our community to make sure that we're dealing with a healthy and prepared community. Based on city administration's recommendations and considering what the climate was for the overall budget this year, fire has no budget modifications. Basically, fire rescue is going to look to maintain the current services that it provides. We do not anticipate a diminish in any of the services, even though we know cost will go up for some of the intangibles. We don't feel that it will adversely impact the level of service that we currently provide. Looking at the objectives for 2020, just to kind of give it the 30,000-foot view, fire rescue is going to be very busy this upcoming year. We have new fire stations that are going to be coming online. There's going to be a lot of shift in personnel. There's going to be a lot of things that can be done in fire that won't impact the budget. There's going to be SOG revisions, policy revisions, rules and regulations revisions. So we tried to take this opportunity while, again, the economic climate is not where it needs to be, to address some of those issues that won't have a fiscal impact or negative fiscal impact to the budget. If you have any questions or concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer those at this time.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Chief, could you talk to us about a little bit about the grants that you guys were able to obtain last year, and then what process you have in place for this year, coming up with any grants that you may be exploring?
Absolutely. We're currently working under a grant right now, the SAFER grant, which is a grant that basically funds 9 of our firefighters. It's a 3-year grant. It's valued at about $1 million, where they do 100% funding the first year, and then there's a reduction in the funding for those firefighters over subsequent years. We've also been able to obtain grants for some of our cardiac monitoring machines in years past, and also our SCBA. We are currently working right now to send some of our employees, and while it is difficult for shift employees to write grants, this is not what they specialize in. We do understand that this is an avenue of funding, and we're going to look to continue to move forward. And me and Mr. Evans have had the conversation about the grant funding and grant positions and how we're going to proceed moving forward with that in the future.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
This was one of the biggest things that I remember when I first came in. This is what Chief actually presented with some of the grants that just his department has taken the initiative to actually do. So if we as a city can kind of do the same thing, Mr. Evans, with the whole department for grant writing, to allow for all of our department heads to not put the additional stress on their employees who are just doing it off the sake of having additional funding for their staff and for their equipment, then that can actually give them the benefit of just, focusing on their job. So I would love to actually see if we can really push that grant writing department. Mr. Chief, next thing, training facility.
Yes, sir.
The facility, is there anything or any plans that you guys have for this fiscal year to do any expansions or additions to the training facility?
There were a lot of wants and hopes. We obviously want to prepare, train. In our nature, we want to provide, but in order to provide, we have to train. We are comfortable with what we have. We do understand what's happening with the budget. In the future, there will be some conversation on expanding that training facility to maybe not only incorporate what we do at the fire department, but also bringing PD on board and maybe, having them do some tactical stuff in our buildings as well. I am working in our current budget to provide for some extra smoke machines, our mannequins or dummies, some of those things. So currently, the status is good. It's not great, but we will be able to sustain with what we have.
How feasible is it, Mr. Evans, for us to possibly work? Because I know Chief gave me instructions that a lot of other municipalities actually come to the facility and even train. How feasible is it for us to work with some of these other municipalities in regards to expansion and funding for this facility to allow for them to have a location to come train at?
No, that's certainly something that long-term we want to look at the possibility of being able to be the main hub for training. Even though our facilities right now are limited, we've been very successful in having entities come and train in our community, which there's a great benefit. Fire county-wide does a really good job on coordinating their training. So there is uniformity and consistency, and there is a mutual respect for the folks here at Riviera Beach Fire. So when we say we're doing a training exercise, they leave that there is some tangible benefits that they walk away with. On a big picture perspective, when we look at the reconstruction of the police department and Fire Station 1, we envision that being a public safety complex to where it's designed to where the building can be utilized for training exercises, where it has the appropriate items where firefighters can rappel off the roof and do existing trainings, that there's rooms in there that can be utilized as smoke rooms, that there's ways that you can design a firehouse now that you can use it for the purposes of training, so you're not necessarily having to have your employees go out and do training throughout the county. So we're looking at that to make sure as much training as we can provide our firefighters here and the county firefighters here, the better off we are. And I had a great conversation with one of the firefighters today about offering some of the training for just CPR to our residents, having a community class to where we can engage the community and let them get a first-hand look at what we're doing in our fire services department.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else? No other questions for fire? All
Thank
right,
you.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Evans, we're going to do the line by line in another meeting with
The line item budget, if it's the pleasure of the board, we can go through a line item budget.
Yes, I think that would be important, because we may want to change some of the amounts and some of the
Yep.
categories.
Yep, after tonight, we can package that up and then be able to provide that back to the board and go through it.
Okay, thanks.
The next department is Public Works, and that is led by Interim Director, Mr. Terrence Bailey.
Good evening, Terrence Bailey, Interim Director of Public Works. As you're very familiar with, the Public Works Department is divided into 5 major divisions. We have the Engineering and Capital Construction Division, Fleet Services, Property Management, Stormwater Management, and Streets and Grounds. As you can see, there are a number of unfunded requests here in the top left box. The Streets and Grounds crew, there was a request for an additional Streets and Grounds crew to provide additional median maintenance, tree trimming in the roads and medians throughout the city. We get a significant number of requests for additional levels of service in keeping the trees trimmed throughout the entire city. As well, Public Works does not currently have an assistant director, and that is an unfunded position. You'll recall during the heat of the roadway projects, the council directed that we put a community organizer into the budget to be a liaison between the department, the projects, and the community, so they'd know who to call, an individual to knock on doors and to disseminate information more thoroughly than is currently done in our operation with our staffing load. In addition, there's been, as you know, many conversations about our current facility situation. The positions unfunded at the bottom are additional electricians, custodians, and management and oversight for our facility operations and maintenance team. I'll stop there. Are there any questions?
For the community organizer, outside of the streets project, what would they do? I mean, once we're finished with all the street projects, what are they going to do? They'll
They're-
help out with the request for the tree trimming and all of that stuff, or what would they do?
Well, recall, there will always be streets projects. We do multiple projects each year. Not all of them are as large as the bond program that we've just wrapped up.
Right.
But also keep in mind, there's a phase 2 of that bond program that,
Yeah.
moving
the
into.
South, yeah, Park Manor's one.
yes,
Yeah.
we've only done the first half of the bond program, and we'll be moving into phase 2. So we will, over the next decade, have that as well.
But what are they
This
gonna do in
person-
the meantime? in
This person
time?
would also facilitate any of the other capital construction, all the buildings that we anticipate, fire stations and city hall. That person is our liaison between the construction side, really the whole department. Anything, whether it be getting back about potholes, they'd be the point person to really bridge the gap between Public Works and the community.
Okay, and Mr. Arthur only handles waste management?
Yes,
Because
He's a
he's like
solid
commu-
waste- solid waste compliance officer.
Okay, so it would be a community person similar to him, but only on the, not dealing with the waste side.
Yes. That was the intent and the direction that came from council during that process.
And I heard you mention about a facilities manager?
No, the positions toward the bottom, custodial electrician, and that senior engineering tech is a position that would be in facilities, as we've had the conversation of changing and reordering how facilities are maintained throughout the city.
Okay,
The conversations that had been ongoing about the facility manager occurred after the budget was done, so it is out there, but has not been integrated in the budget at this time.
so that would be something that needs to be we'll be looking to add? Is there somebody?
That is something that we've had the conversations, the assistant city manager and I have talked about a facilities management division, so we can be proactive in some of the issues that we have with our building. So we're gonna look at the resources that we have and be able to start assembling a team. And it may require taking bits and pieces from different departments to assemble that team. So the existing workforce may be there, there may be someone in parks, there may be someone in public works, there may be someone in utilities that together can be a facilities management team that can attack all the city facilities that we have. So that's something that we're looking at as part of the budget process as well.
Okay. And for the streets crew leader, I know part of the problem, because I brought that up about the maintenance of the road, the landscaping on different roads, was mainly based on scheduling issues or providing work schedules for them to be effective in where they are and maintaining them. So is that what the streets crew leader would do, is just kind of make sure that the crews that you have are using their time effectively and being able to maintain the schedule that's put into place to handle that?
No, the work you're describing is done by the division head, the streets and grounds manager, or the stormwater manager. A crew leader is the next level above the maintenance worker. That is the person who typically will drive the truck with all of the crew in the truck. They'll make sure all of the equipment is sharpened at the end of the day, oiled, gassed up. They are the on-the-spot, in the work area supervisor to make sure that they stay on task, come and go, and they're sort of the eyes and ears in the field. So you have a crew that is typically 3 maintenance workers and a crew leader who leads that team. So it's a group of 4. Currently, we have 3 crews, and this was a request to go to a 4th crew to help facilitate beautification in the right-of-way.
I guess that's still part of what I'm asking is, do we know if the actual amount of crews we have already are not, do we know if they're not enough, or it's a matter of the scheduling that's an issue?
Based on the number of emails I get on when are you coming to do X street, I can say if definitively we don't have enough crews.
Because I know part of the problem was the scheduling. Sometimes some of the crews were not working as much as they probably could have because of a scheduling issue. So I just want to make sure that we're not bringing on more people unnecessarily when we have enough people, we're not using them in an effective manner.
Please also remember, this is the same group of people when tables and chairs need to be set up for special events around the city. They come off of their normal duty to be the hands and feet of the city. So some of the scheduling issues that you've experienced are when we get multiple calls from multiple zones to do maintenance work and setting up tables and chairs and preparing facilities for special events.
All right, anyone else have any questions?
I wanted to ask a question, Madam Chair, in regards to the facilities manager position. I had some concern about that, given the fact that, of course, you know, the majority of the city's own facilities are in bad shape. There's mold in the police department, there's mold in the fire department, and there seems to be no coordination in terms of inspections happening routinely for city facilities. So how do you plan to address that?
That's something that I would assume that if we are to create a facility management division, that there would be routine schedules, that they would consistently check facilities, that they would look at AC ducts, that they would look at some of the things that are happening, but it would be one particular group of individuals that are in one division, that their responsibility is to work their way through the facilities and then put in the appropriate work orders to follow through. Because right now, some departments handle it on their own, some contact Public Works. It's a mismatch of different things that are happening at this particular moment.
And that's the issue that we have now, because I don't want, I mean, it seems now there's a hodgepodge of handymen, and there's no person engineer, there's no structural, there's nobody in place to ensure the safety of these buildings. I understand that, you know, different people do, but there's nothing coordinated that I see in terms of, because we wouldn't be here where we are if that were the case. So I want that to be addressed, certainly.
All right, anyone else? All right, thank you.
Stormwater, which, as you know, is in essence integrated with Public Works. It is an enterprise fund, so it appears on its own slide, but it's a funding source, and they maintain the canals and control structures. And we haven't had a really bad flood on a road in a number of years, so we are out there diligently keeping the system working. Any questions on stormwater?
I would, Madam Chair, I would beg to differ that you don't have any floods in the roads.
I said significant, but yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that's not true. People call all the time about their roads flooding, so how do you address that? Because it's not happening.
It would help if I had, if I knew exactly where you're referring to. But if there is standing water on the road for days, which I don't know we've seen standing water for days, I guess from a technical perspective as an engineer, we don't define flooding until the water's there for a number of days. If it's anything less than 6 hours, that's sort of part of the normal rainstorm event and how the system's designed. But that may not match the expectation and level of service that residents come to know and expect. There are a number of options, which all include spending money to increase the system's capacity to move water and store it away so it's not visible on the roads. And when we run into a situation where there is a systemic problem, we look to our capital program to rebuild the road, add capacity, and eliminate that issue.
Okay.
What about for the cleaning of the gutters, and how often do you have someone that's on 24 hours that can go out if the trash is getting in it? Because I notice a lot of times trash or like on H Avenue over there by the well, on the south side of H Avenue West. That side has been flooding. Normally that doesn't flood. That there's several different drains by that, the church right here by the American Legion. That whole area has been flooding the last few rains that we've had, and that normally doesn't do that. But what I see is the trash that's building up around. How often do you all go through and clean out that area?
I don't have an answer on how frequently, number of times per year. We have one street sweeper.
Per year? But, yeah.
We have a
so-
street sweeper that has to service the entire city. Those are $300,000-$400,000 piece of equipment. So we would, in a different time, we would get another one or two so that you'd have multiple individuals roaming the city at the same time to increase the frequency from which we do street sweeping. But
But
currently
if
we
it's
have the
clogging
one.
up, you send someone out there
Yes.
and they just
If-
move
if-
it out the way, right? You just sweep it out the way? Or
I
you
believe
have to
during
get a
the,
street sweeper to do that?
You all got an opportunity to see the vac truck during
Yeah.
your, if there's a situation and somebody calls that there's flooding and we know that there's trash in the inlet or a clog, we send the vac truck to go clean it out, and that generally takes care of it.
But are there any proactive measures that you all take, like every, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 months, you go and clean them out instead of waiting till something backs up and then you go clean it out? Or is that not how it works?
No, well, right now, we don't have the amount of staff. There's only one vac truck, and again, that's a $500,000 piece of equipment. So and there's not a crew dedicated to full-time just driving the vac truck 40 hours a week, vacuuming out the systems proactively. So with the current staffing load and funding that we have in the stormwater budget, it's on a reactionary method. But you have to understand, protecting the stormwater system is layered. Our first best defense is asking the residents not to throw trash out the window that ends up in the road. The second layer of defense is the vac truck, the sweeper truck. So when the sweeper truck comes down the road, it gets all of that trash off the road before it gets in the stormwater system. And then the third level of defense is, in the event that there's a situation, we can send out the vac truck to clean out the system to make sure that we don't have long-term standing water or potential inundation in the roads.
No, it's not necessarily from what I see, and I'm speaking about this area mostly because it's been happening a lot. It's mainly leaves, it's not trash that they're
Right.
throwing. It's
I-
leaves, a bunch of leaves
Wait,
and stuff.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Go ahead.
Thank you for that. I couldn't understand. I've seen this, right? If pine needles accumulate, I think the question she's asking, does someone usually come out? Because it happens. If you don't go out down your street and move it, the water will start flooding.
Right.
That's the question I thought I heard. But, you know, aside from the vac truck and the street sweeper, who maintains the catch basins when there's a huge rainstorm and the road is flooded? Like, is there somebody that goes out after every single rainstorm, or, you know, periodically after, you know, it stops raining to clear it? Because if not,
It's gonna accumulate.
that's when the flooding starts. And it's not so much of a maintenance issue, but who addresses it right as it occurs?
Yes, sir. We have a standard protocol that obviously streets and grounds and stormwater, 80% of the time, we're out cutting grass and maintaining canals. If, as we are in season now, a 2 o'clock heavy rainstorm comes, they're going to pack up, come in, and get redeployed to go out and observe the streets. Everyone that's an all hands on deck, we drive up and down the streets looking for inundation, and the crews will jump out with rakes, rake off the pine needles or whatever may be an obstruction, and then also make note of it so that after the water subsided, the vac truck can come out and do spot cleaning in the storm structure and anything that may have gotten in the pipes afterwards.
I don't think that's happening, Mr. Bailey.
Well,
But if that's the plan, we want to just make sure it's happening, but that's not happening over here, for sure, no, over there. Because it's building up. It's not something that just happened one time, so.
But please also understand that that segment of our workforce leaves at 3:30. So if 5:30 it rains, then no
that's
one will
my
be.
question.
That's
That's
my
the question.
question.
Okay, so-
Do we need more people to put in this budget to make sure, it needs to be addressed, so how can we address that? What will fix that?
If I could get an opportunity to meet with the manager and come back with a comprehensive plan on how we can address your concerns, we'll have something for you.
Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair. One of the things we also have to look at is the
if we have a maintenance schedule and if we're consistently, proactively out there, because it may just be a scheduling thing to help resolve these issues, but I'll get with the department head and we'll
Okay.
work through that.
All right,
Question
anyone
on-
else? Go ahead.
On the debt service, Madam Chair,
Pull your microphone, microphone.
what is the, not what is debt service, but is this tied to any specific projects, any kind of storm water projects?
The debt service that was issued for the stormwater and supported by the stormwater revenues was to match the street projects
That's going
that are
on?
actually wrapping up. So again, there's very little dollars left in there. We borrowed $10 million to match the money that we did with streets, and then the utility district paid for their portion as well.
So, how long after 2020 do you imagine that we'll have it? I guess we'll probably go back out again for some other projects for matching?
Correct. If you've got new projects that you want to look at borrowing the funds for, then we can certainly do that. We could.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I just want to go back to the previous department, backing off stormwater for a second. Somebody asked me not too long ago whether more than one department in this city mows the lawn. Are there multiple lawnmower?
Yes, ma'am. Public Works, it's called Streets and Grounds specifically, because we only maintain right-of-ways. All the city properties and parks and all of the grass that are not inside a road are maintained by parks. And actually, the grass that you see in canals is maintained by stormwater. So there are 3 different entities who, air quotes, cut grass in the city.
Is that working out?
We had the conversation back in 2017 about the possibility of looking at an alternative option. Multiple cities do it different ways. It provides for a challenging situation when a resident calls and they see the park, or they stop a parks employee and they see them on a lawnmower and they say, hey, there's a canal down there, and they say, well, call this department. And so there's some things that we need to look at to see what makes sense operationally and how we can, you know, if the existing system works, or we need to look at a modified approach. But that is something that we've had the conversation, you know, back in 17, and I certainly think it warrants having the conversation again.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I want to ask a question about how this works in terms of overgrown lots in the city. We get calls all the time about overgrown lots that are either abandoned or could be city property, and it goes on. I mean, it doesn't. It's like it never gets addressed.
If it is a residential parcel that is not controlled by the city, it has to go through the code enforcement process, but then we effectively go out there and remedy the situation. If it's a city lot or city property or a city canal, we're supposed to be the entities out there. We're the entity that's responsible and supposed to be proactively going out there and maintaining that, so there's not a situation where our properties become nuisance in the neighborhood and harbor trash and debris and become a dumping ground. Because if we're not out there all the time, people know that.
I think that needs to be tightened up, because those are the calls that I get all the time in regards to overgrown lots. And I've sent you several addresses around the city, and, you know, people call and say they've been talking to the last council for 3 years and nothing has happened. So we're not talking about something that just was overgrown last month. We're talking about years that needs to be addressed.
All right. Anyone else?
Yeah, Madam Chair, just to coincide with that, a lot of the alleyways, and I get a lot of calls saying, we're finding people, but the city's properties are not up to par. So let's make sure that we're getting that done to be an example, and then we can lift our residents up.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
The next department is Parks and Recreation, and Director Blankenship.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Richard Blankenship, Parks and Recreation Director. Parks and Recreation Department is made up of 3 divisions: the Recreation Division, the Aquatics Division, and the Parks Division. Our major budget modification for 20 is a reduction in the amount of money that we will spend on July 4th celebration. That is being reduced by $40,000. Our objectives for 20 include development of the Parks Master Plan, which is a critical element for the future of the city, complete all of our grant-funded park upgrades, increase sponsorships and donations, increase revenues overall, and then continue to seek alternative funding. We are lockstep in getting off as much of the Avalorem need as possible. With that, I'll answer any questions about the Parks and Recreation budget.
Madam Chair?
Okay,
Doug,
Lanier and then McCoy, and then Lawson?
I wanted to ask a question in regards to, of course, you know, Barracuda Bay, and how we're going to address the issue of bringing them in the black. I mean, because this is carrying a debt, you know, year after year, what are you guys looking at in terms of trying to bring revenue there, or trying to get it active
And
to
that-
make money?
That is a great question. We'll have discussion later on about possibly raising the fees again. We did that about 18 months ago. We do market the facility very well, and that's where our bread and butter is in private parties. But, you know, there's only so many private parties that are coming to us. We can market it even more.
So you think it's raising the fees will bring in more revenue? Is that?
Raising the fees is because if you eliminate one element of that facility, you eliminate an attraction. So, you know, staff has thrown around the ideas of, well, if we did this, we would reduce a little bit of the cost, but then we're gonna reduce people's interest in coming there. So the best way for us to address the raising more revenue is to raise the fees. Now, over the last 2 years, we will be close to $100,000 in revenues at Barracuda Bay this year, and that's at $3 a head, basically. Yeah, we
So
have.
what would you be looking at? So if you're doing $3, would you be looking at 4, 5, 6?
Well, the first thing we would do is show you the market study of the adjacent like facilities, but, you know, $5 for a resident and $8 for a non-resident is, I don't believe is unreasonable.
No, I know that the Barracuda Bay is no Rapids, but I mean, I think they get like $50 a head or something.
Yeah.
But I think that I don't want to, because it's been in the red, I don't want to see it just not be there anymore. I want to make sure that this place is making money.
And keep in mind, some of that red, because of our admin offices are there, some of that red is because of the admin offices. It's not going to generate any revenue there.
I see.
You know, some of the cost are because of that. But again, you know, we feel like it's a diamond in the rough. There are not many communities of 34,000 people that have that type of facility. But the best way to reduce the red is to raise fees.
Madam Chair, if I may, to speak about Barracuda Bay, another thing that I think lends itself to another discussion with this board and the community as part of the master plan process. As part of the master plan process that the Recreation Department's going through, they will be looking at all the city facilities, all the city parks, to give you a good understanding of what the future for recreation is and the direction that recreation is moving. Because they may come back and tell you that you need to upgrade or you need to make more investments if you want to see that bottom line improve. Because at some point, if facilities become functionally obsolete, that has an adverse impact on your ability to generate revenue. So you may find out that consultants come in and say, instead of increasing the fees or marketing and promoting, you need to invest X amount of dollars in modernizing the facility to attract different people to spend more disposable income in that facility. So, but that's all part of a discussion when they will have community charrette meetings, discussions with this board, that you can get a good understanding that where recreation is going. And it may find itself that when we look to reconstruct some of our recreation facilities, that you incorporate it in the new design of a Wells or a Dan Calloway or what have you, you may find that you can incorporate a new water park into that facility that may save you on staffing or add other amenities that are more desirable to what people are looking for in today's day and age.
Madam Chair.
Hold on, we had an order here. You're still,
I want one more.
go ahead.
I wanted for you to talk about the Dan Calloway renovations.
Well, the first thing that we're doing in October is changing out the court lighting to LED lighting, and that was from a grant that we got. The next part that we'll be doing is just to be upgrading the amphitheater, the amenities in the amphitheater, new cover, the park benches, the picnic tables, the trash cans, all of that is original from when it was redone the first time. And we'll be replacing all of that kind of stuff. There won't be any new construction other than the cover over the amphitheater stage.
What was the year of the original construction there?
I believe it was like 2003 maybe.
Oh,
So just upgrading the amenities and making it a more appealing, safer location to recreate.
and what is this Long Pine Park improvement?
Well, we've gotten a grant to upgrade Long Pine Park, but I won't answer what it's gonna be, because I don't know what it's gonna be, because that'll be a part of the master planning. The community will tell us what they want, or what they would desire, and then we will, do the shredding, and I know the minimum, the community's complained about it being so undulated, it's not flat, that kind of, that'll be the minimum that we would do, but as far as amenities, that'll be up to the community.
Anything else, Ms. Lanier?
That's it.
What I said, who's next? McCoy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question was gonna be how do you plan on increasing revenue? Because I actually been to Barracuda Bay twice now since I've been in office, and not just to recreate, but I was definitely trying to pay attention to operations. And if you go to this place, the first thing that came to mind is there's a lot of lifeguards, right? And I'll tell you another thing that I've done. I've been out to Wells Recreation during football season. And what I figured out on my second visit at Barracuda Bay, that I don't believe, Councilwoman Lanier, that Barracuda Bay is set up in a manner to be profitable, because there's no other park that you're gonna go to that's gonna charge you $3. I mean, I paid $6 for me and my son, right? But even Calypso Bay and Coconut Grove, which are Palm Beach County water parks, I mean, I think they charge 10 or 12 bucks, $12, I believe it is, 10 bucks. So, I don't know what their numbers are, but at least in Riviera Beach, the issue we have is how do we provide recreation to the people that we serve? And I don't believe that we can really expect, being that you have to have staff and cleaning of the chlorine and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, unless you take the price to $15 a person, I mean, then and only then you may be able to see a profit. But I just couldn't see it compared to going to a Rapids. Obviously, you're going to pay $50 bucks to enter. Then, but literally $6 for two people to go into a water park. I felt like I would have been comfortable with paying at least $10 each for each person. But that's just the thing that we have in Riviera Beach. And the same can be said for our football programs. $75 is that's the cheapest that you'll find in probably all of Florida, quite honestly. I don't know where you can take your child and play recreation football, but it comes a point we have to provide services, but I don't know if it's necessarily that every single department has to turn a profit, because I don't see that in Barracuda Bay, because a lot of those kids are just happy to be at a water park, right? So it's kind of a toned down version. So I realized then that I don't see that, and I was very mindful. I was concerned, like, how does this happen? But I don't think it's set up that way unless you run the prices up to $15 a head, So that's what I wanted to say to that. But outside of that, is there any other ways? Because, I mean, there's only so much marketing you can do, right? Like, what is the way we increase revenue for parks and recreation?
Well, the first thing we'll do is a part of the master plan is review our fees across the board. I don't know, other than Barracuda Bay, which was raised a year or so ago, I don't know that our fees for programming had been raised or rentals it hasn't been done since I've been here, so we'll do a evaluation of fees and that, you know, provide that to the board. We've got the Brooks Center now. That is that's a revenue opportunity. It's also an expense, but it's a revenue opportunity. You know, Saturday, we have 2 bookings at that location back to back. So it's appealing. Increasing participation is another way to raise revenue. As far as sponsorships and that kind of stuff, we just need to be better at getting in front of the businesses in the community and having a put together package and seeking some of their support. When staff has done it, they've been successful, so we just need to amp that up.
Follow up.
Go ahead.
So, Mr. Blankenship, one last thing. We do have swim weeks at Barracuda Bay, correct?
We do.
Okay. Has there ever been a thought or perhaps an idea of doing swim lessons at the actual ocean or at, you know, at the beach? As
I'm not sure
opposed-
that's somewhere you want to do swim lessons, but to be honest, to answer your question, no, I've not had that thought.
Well, no, but because here's why. I've seen children much more comfortable at a beach as opposed to a pool. It's just, in my opinion,
You didn't see those little kids out there at the little drowning prevention class. Those kids were losing their mind. And that was just the pool. So you can imagine taking a 4-year-old to the ocean and saying, okay, we're going to teach you. It's a whole different ballgame.
well, and I may be wrong. I just thought, at least in my observation, I thought probably the beach would be a more comfortable environment. Well, it's not. You got to actually physically get in. I took my son to swim lessons, and it was terrifying. I'm serious.
You think you do better in the ocean?
Yes, because he's, you know, he actually, you know, he did the water at the beach, and then when he got in pool, now he's terrified of water. So I just thought it was, I didn't know if that was ever explored, especially, you know, the conversation that started about Peanut Island. I'd be like, it'd be great to take kids over, right? And be able to involve them in water activities like swim lessons, which is a little bit different environment where it's not just about going to get in the pool, that it can be more interactive and more, you know, comprehensive. So that's my concern on that. So that's all I have.
All right, Mr. Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Blankenship, what is currently our cost to operate Barracuda Bay? What's our annual cost as of last year?
Roughly $600,000.
That's the operating cost?
Yes, sir.
And how much revenue did we bring in last year from Barracuda Bay?
Last year was in the low 80s, I believe, and
Okay,
we
so
were
it costs us-
projecting about 100,000 this year, close to
Okay,
100,000.
so it costs us about $500,000 to run and operate Barracuda Bay.
Roughly.
Our goal with Parks and Recs is to give the outlets like Councilman McCoy and Councilman Lanier said, but that cost annually just to give an outlet location that's underutilized, I think we really have to address that as a board the next coming years by looking at possibly rebranding, by possibly looking at partnering with other major organizations like the Rapids and seeing if they want to have like a subsidiary location where our residents can go for free, but they can do the marketing for us. Possibly even the option of investing that money that we're spending annually, $500,000, into our other parks to build out something else, maybe a water park at one of the other facilities, and selling that real estate. $500,000 annually is not worth keeping when we're not seeing the numbers of residents actually visiting this park. It's something that we had great plans for, but it's just not working for us. So unless we can look at other options of possibly rebranding it, possibly remarketing the location, doing something else that can kind of make it profitable, $500,000, not even profitable, just a lower cost for us. Because right now, $500,000 to just give the residents a location to look at while they drive by is not sitting well with me at all. So I'd like to hear if there's any other ideas that we may have of doing something else with Barracuda Bay over the next, coming years.
Well, I imagine that may come out during the master planning process.
And follow up, Madam Chair? And just another thing, I saw that we're doing a reduction on the 4th of July event. I have residents that are still talking about it. So with that $40,000 reduction that we're actually doing from the 4th of July, I just want us to start maybe early, as soon as possible with the grants and with trying to find some funding. I'm sorry, not grants, with sponsorships for that 4th of July event, because that's 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 residents that have access that are out there that these businesses would love to actually sponsor and partner with. And then with our development of that, working with them to see how they can actually promote and market their products to incorporate into the event, maybe making a sponsorship row so that those vendors and sponsors out there are actually going to be, you know, introduced to the residents. And when they first walk in, they go down that row so that it can be more attractive for them to actually sponsor it. Because if we're going to take 40,000 from the event, I want to make sure that doesn't drop off in the quality. Thank you.
All right, Councilwoman Botel?
Thank you. I think we've addressed a number of the things that I had concerns about. First, the cost of Barracuda Bay. It's really something that we have to take a hard look at. I know that we would all agree that it's wonderful to have a water park right here in Riviera Beach for our residents, but the cost of that is just something that I don't know that we can continue to bear. And I agree with Councilman Lawson. That 4th of July event is just so good, and everyone raves about it. It's a wonderful, wonderful event. I hate to see us reduce the quality of it, and I agree that we could undoubtedly get sponsors for it. But one thing that continues to come up when I have conversations with people in the city is we don't have any, and this is, you know, a generalization, we don't have anything for our kids to do. And I just wonder whether we can take a look at maybe diversifying the offerings that we have in our recreation department. You know, I know that we can't ourselves build a movie theater or a bowling alley, but there must be some other things that we can think about. Maybe even we can, partnering with other developers, we can bring more entertainment value for our kids in the city. So just something to think about in the future. Thanks.
And Madam Vice Chair, if I may, the master plan, when they look at that, they have those discussions with the community and get input on facilities. Because if we continue to think that just traditional sports and you just throw a basketball or a football or a baseball out there and kids are going to recreate, you're really missing the opportunity. There's a lot more technology that's incorporated in it. So the master plan is going to engage the community in such a fashion that we'll find out what facilities we have that are maybe functionally obsolete or need substantial renovations or just are sited in the wrong location. And that would be things that long-term we would take the steps to cure, to really look at recreational programming for our entire community. Because there was an article in AARP, and you don't have to ask why I was reading AARP, that if you're calling senior centers, if you're calling your new facility senior centers, you're not attracting the boomers and you're not attracting the active seniors. They're more activity centers. They want intergenerational centers because the baby boomers really connect with the millennials and they want to go on trips and they want to do social things versus sitting there and playing cards. So you have to look at what the dynamics of your community is, how it's changing, and how do you continue to be relevant from a parks and recreation perspective in the 21st century. But that is a lot of the meat that they'll get into as part of the master planning process to see what nature of recreation will be successful here in this community. Because we may find out that pocket parks are a thing of the past and they're looking at more regional parks, and these are the types of facilities that we're looking at, and you know, we can move forward in another direction to really give our community those outlets and those amenities they're looking for.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Sorry, one more follow-up. I think that there are a lot of events that Mr. Blankenship, a lot of activities for our residents, but we really have to use that social media network. We need to really get out to the residents and tell them about what's going on. My daughter participated in a scuba diving class over at the facilities at Barracuda Bay. There was 3 residents there. My daughter, another 9-year-old, and his grandmother that were taking the course. It was low cost. It was an amazing course, and she loved it. You can't find a sitter for less than what they were out there for a 3-day course. And they, Parks and Recs, put that together and partnered. So I'm not sure how we can get the residents to know more about it or get more residents to participate in these events. Because even if we market it, we'll market to all the residents, and we'll have maybe 50 or 60 show up. So our residents need to be just as responsible as we are, because we're providing these activities and we want them to come out to them, but we also need to make sure that we're getting the word to them and they have no excuses for us. Because that she loved it. She still talks about that today, and this was about 2-3 months ago with her taking scuba diving classes at the age of 9. So those activities are available, and there's things that they're doing in Parks and Recs, but our residents are not connecting with them. So we need to really get them out to them and find a way to connect with them.
When will we be doing this master plan?
The contract comes to you September 5th, and then it's, assuming it's approved, we'll start 1st of October,
And then that takes about how long?
about a year. It's a very detailed, in-depth community involvement exercise.
With the gyms, I know a lot of people complain about the gyms not being open as much as when I was growing up, gyms were always open. Is that a matter of not having enough staff to have the gyms open on Sundays or Saturdays, more hours?
Well, Saturdays, the gyms are open Monday through Thursday and Saturday. It's a budgetary thing if we were to open it up more hours. We would love for it to be the nest that it was many years ago.
I mean, I would like to see how much, see what that budget looks like in terms of being able to have the activities going. Now, obviously, I don't want to just have it open to be open, but to have activities going on so it can be used, because a lot of the complaints are, gyms are always closed. I know for the aftercare program, obviously, it can't be open at that time, but on the weekends, Sundays, what would the cost, to be able to see what the cost would be in order to have it staffed more and open more and be more accessible versus being closed all the time. And then also are there any restrictions on the dates and times, days and times, when people can rent the gym for a funeral, reception, or whatever?
Well, I mean, during the week, it's a little bit of a challenge, depending on the facility they want. But typically, it's not if it's not already booked.
So, but if that's one of our days to be open, like say Saturday, we will shut the gym down in order to have the reception? Okay. All right, and I would like to see if you wanted to have the gyms open, all of those days, and Friday nights as well, what would that cost be? Obviously, to have some activities going.
We will provide it.
Anyone else?
Just one last question, and perhaps it might be better offline. I was just curious about, do we collect sales tax on admission?
It's built in the admission.
It is? Okay. I was curious. All right.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
The next department is information technology, and I'm not even gonna attempt Tony's last name, so, Tony?
Good evening. I'm Tony Parzielli, Chief Information Officer for the college. I mean, excuse me, I'm still in the college, the city. Too much time in higher education, I think.
I don't know. What was that?
He used to be in higher education. He
I-
used to be at-
Yeah. Palm Beach State Community College, or Palm Beach State College now, as they're known. I'm going to start with the organization chart, and IT is a service delivery function for the city and supports city departments as well as the infrastructure. Network operations is in-building networks as well as our private networks from building to building and communication systems. Our systems operation and service desk are system admins that support
We have
various
a service
departments.
desk, Mr. Parzielli?
Pardon?
We have a service desk?
We had a service desk. It's one of my priorities to get a service desk back.
Let me make sure I get the number from you right now.
Probably going to use the Q Alert
Oh,
system and
okay.
be able to put tickets in and build a knowledge base so that we can support our customers and resolve problems once rather than multiple times.
Okay.
Next item are geographic information systems for the city that include our land parcels and layered approach to different layers and of geographic systems that are run through IT. And then IT also is supporting public safety. Over the last year, we've certainly compressed the implementation of a new infrastructure systems, replacing a number of end-of-life systems. We've also addressed information security concerns and systems and applications. And we've restored a lot of the city data. That process continues to go ongoing. Certainly the easier, smaller systems were the first to come up, and as well as the highly critical systems, and we continue that today. Regarding our budget modifications, There are 2 new positions in there for information technology technicians. This is addressing a staffing void that was in IT around desktop support. The city maintains over 650 personal computers, laptops, and tablets that are used by city staff as well as public use. And those need to be properly patched and addressed, and it's a very time-consuming process on desktop support in order to do settings or when someone's computer is not working. So that's there. In terms of the budget requests there, a lot of our services are moving to subscription-based services. So there's an increase in contractual services and in operating supplies. A lot of it is to address UPS systems that need to be in for computers, as well as getting a security awareness program for our staff so that we understand the risk out there and can kind of help protect against information security. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer questions. And
How safe are we now?
we're safer than we were last year.
Yeah, well, I would hope so. I mean, have we done enough? Are we, how much risk do we still have of this happening ever
There's always
again?
risk. You know, you heard earlier, Texas, there were 22,
Yes, yeah.
22 small municipal governments. And of course, that was a coordinated attack that went out to hundreds probably. And you know, $2.5 million is the ransom for the 22 is what they've quoted. There's always risk. I had the opportunity to ask one of the consultants that we brought in from Charles River Associates, what's the future of cyber attacks? And I mean, he said ransomware, and more ransomware because it's profitable.
I mean, the other night we had a presentation from the census person, and I asked him, you know, what guardian, what did they have in place? Oh no, we're safe, we're safe. Is it possible to be completely safe ever? You're
I will
saying
never
not.
say you're 100% safe. It's impossible. There's, you know, both sides where, you know, they're building better systems to get into your system. Our vendors that we're using for protection are building better safeguards. It's we're just caught in the middle, and we need to continue to make wise investments.
Yeah. Any questions?
Are you, thank you, sir. Are you a member of the, it's not the League of Cities, there's a league that we spoke with at the League of Cities that's actually a group of the chief information officers throughout Florida that kind of bounce ideas off of each other within different municipalities on how to keep our cities safe. Are you a member of that league?
I am not. I was, when I was in Palm Beach State College, there was a group of CIOs with the colleges. It's a good idea. I mean, you share stories, you share where risks are, and
That was, I
Certainly would like
received
to.
some information, I don't have it with me, but I'll pass it on to Mr. Evans, because I definitely think that's an organization I'd love for you to join, because just speaking with some of them there, everybody knew Riviera Beach while we were there, and ransomware was one of the topics we discussed, so we want to not be the topic of discussion for that, so if we can definitely get you a part of that.
unfortunately, we've become celebrities. and
Oh,
that's-
we were celebrities, we were superstars there, but that was my only concern, I thought.
Madam
Go ahead.
Chair, yeah, I was gonna mention that. After the League of Cities, yeah, I left out, but I was sitting there thinking, I almost feel like we were experts, right? Because most of the stuff that they were saying in there, we had already heard, right? In
Yeah,
our first
yeah.
4 months of
Right.
being on the board. But believe it or not, I think there's a lot of vulnerabilities in municipalities and small government agencies, and is definitely a target for these threat actors, I believe is the terminology that was used. But I was very much surprised, and again, I'm grateful that we had, as much as, the media probably didn't support us as well as they could, and probably supported their own ratings, right? But we were really in good shape, because a lot of these other cities, they didn't even have the safeguards that we did have. And obviously, that same question that you asked Dr. Botel about how safe are we, we had these two individuals on the panel. They said you can never, completely eliminate all risk. It's just inherent. And I really felt comfortable knowing where we were. And, obviously it was a struggle for the organization, but I think, you know, I support whatever it is that we have to do to maintain it, because I mean, I just look at some of the other cities that we've seen. I think they would probably literally have to start all over if they had the sort of attack that we had. So I'm grateful that we did have those safeguards in place.
The volume of calls we receive from other cities and municipalities in Florida, it's a wake-up call.
So that, you know what, we should consult. IT should start generating revenue.
It's a revenue source.
I have to tell you this one quick thing, given the hour, I won't make it long, but, you know, I do this workforce development thing, and I'm working with the college to set up some courses here in Riviera Beach, and I worked with a college down in Miami who was offering us an opportunity to deliver courses in cybersecurity, and I thought, wouldn't that be just making lemonade out of lemons if we were like the capital of cybersecurity experts, our own population, making the cybersecurity world, anyway.
Madam Chair, one more question.
Go ahead.
Do we have, are one of these positions catered towards education and training of our staff on how to actually avoid some of the issues? Because that was the biggest thing we talked about at League of Cities, is just the training and the education of all of our employees here on what to do and what not to do.
Yes, we're looking at a security awareness program, putting it in, requiring all staff to attend. And again, it's just kind of looking for things, and I shared with the city manager a spearfishing attack that went on in Naples. I don't know if anybody read about that, where they got enough information and they got to the right people, and there was a construction contract, and they wired $700,000 worth of funds to a bank account and ABA routing number that they provided, and I'm not sure they ever retrieved the $700,000, but it's.
And follow up, Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Another also thought process and to put into the budget is actually doing our own trainings and attacking our own system, utilizing some of the other chief information officers, local municipalities, or even somebody outside consultant to come in and just to check on a quarterly or semi-annually basis, just to see the stance and the position of how our IT department is. If we can make sure we have that budgeted to just do that due diligence on as often as possible, to just make sure that we're least vulnerable.
All right.
Thank you, Madam.
Just a quick question. Other cities, I've heard that other cities are actually, what's that, secret shopper kind of thing? You know, other
Sending
cities
texts.
are sending texts in to see which employees open them. Are we doing anything? Or maybe we shouldn't say we're doing that.
No.
We shouldn't.
yeah.
That's called social engineering, where they go in. Yeah, be reluctant to put too much in a public meeting. And
Sorry.
It's just training. It's training. Anyone else?
Yeah, I also wanted to address the issue for IT, not for the IT department, but for, you know, as you talked about the training for staff. I know other municipalities have trainings at least twice a year. There are pre and post tests that, you know, they have to pass and get certified to know where phishing is happening, where other types of malware is happening on their computer. So is there anywhere in this budget that addresses, or is this the department that addresses staff training for IT?
yes, for security awareness training, we have that as part of the budget this year to provide a program for our staff, which will do exactly what you've said, is you actually have to read and go through the material and take a short test and then certify, and I'd like to be able to get that at least once a year into the city's just process.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
The next department is Development Service, and Acting Director, Mr. Jeff Gagnon.
Before Mr. Gatton gets started, the Plamosa Park thing, isn't that on the west side of Obama, not west of Broadway, because that's Park Manor?
It's interesting, when that discussion came up last night, I was back in my office and did a quick search, and there's actually a neighborhood plat that is just south of Silver Beach and west of Broadway. So I don't know if the project had, well, first of all, I don't know.
No, I'm just saying that's not so that area is not Park Manor, that's closer
No.
to Broadway.
No, and there could
Okay.
be
Well, I'm gonna
another
search that out,
reference
see
otherwise,
what
but
area.
that was the first location that came up according to the plat book.
Okay.
And I have since emailed you that email.
Yeah, that's why I asked, because I was wondering, was that the west side of Obama instead of the west side of Broadway? All right.
We can definitely look to see if there's a duplication of names, which could happen.
All right. Good evening.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, sir. Honorable Mayor, Council. My name is Jeff Gagnon. I'm the Acting Director of Development Services for the city. Development Services is comprised of our Planning and Zoning Division, our Building Division, and Code Compliance Division. We currently have 30 funded positions. The fiscal year budget considers unfunding 2 positions that are currently vacant, the Executive Assistant position and Code Compliance Officer 2 position. There's no new capital projects for this fiscal year. I'm somewhat excited about our 2020 objectives. I know Councilwoman Lanier, you mentioned lot maintenance as far as private lots and code compliance. I think what we're finding is it's our process that's too slow and not reactionary enough or not quick enough to be effective. So what we're looking to do is modify the code compliance ordinance and that process to be more effective, and also possibly look into altered fee rates for what we'll call a repeat offender. So that's one of our objectives for fiscal year 2020. We kind of have a sandwich approach as far as prioritizing our staff's approach to public service and ensuring that we are providing the best public service possible. With that, we want to enable staff to have exposure to training programs and really ensure that our staff is empowered to perform their job to the best ability possible. We also have on our 2020 objective list, moving into our comprehensive plan amendment process. We had kind of initiated the process previously, and I think we're now finally at the point where we can move forward full steam ahead. That will require a large public engagement component similar to the Parks and Rec master plan that was discussed previously. The other objectives are really centered around communicating with our other intergovernmental stakeholders, whether that's the Port of Palm Beach, that I know Councilman Lawson's been working very close with, whether that's the Business Development Board as far as attracting and maintaining businesses within our city. So that's really our 2020 objectives in a nutshell, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Gagnon. I really want to see our process streamlined. So getting a web-based or online approval. We have the most dated system when it comes to the permitting process, and I really want us to focus on getting everything online, getting it seamless. I love what you incorporated with the 24-hour or the same-day permitting, because if we're going to continue to grow and attract businesses to the community and really try to change the image, we have to start there with our permitting and our permitting department. So what ideas do you have or direction can we actually take to actually increase the quality of permitting, the speed and the process of that?
Absolutely, yeah, thank you for mentioning that. The same-day permitting was something that we kind of implemented slowly, and we're still trying to tweak the all working aspects of that, but what we're trying to do is offer a 24-hour permitting turnaround time for some of the smaller permits, whether that's an AC changeout, a door replacement, something where a contractor can come in and drop off the application in the morning and then pick it up in the afternoon and be able to proceed with work. We found that that's been extremely successful so far. It's been successful in the fact that contractors have the ability to move forward in an expedited manner. It also has assisted in ensuring that the smaller projects aren't stuck behind some of the larger projects that come in that take more staff review time. So that's been beneficial. The other element that we have in play currently is the city has moved forward with the Tyler software system, and there's different modules for individual departments. We're not quite into the rollout phase for development services, but what our intent is to have a fully integrated review system, which will allow each department responsible for review of a permit application to have simultaneous access to the documentation that will come with date stamp, time stamp as far as when things are submitted, when comments are provided from staff members. So it'll really move us to a point of really full transparency, because I think a lot of the issues we have now really come with communication, unfortunately. And we're spending a lot of human capital just providing status updates versus reviewing the plans and getting them approved. So I think this new system will definitely help with that current issue.
Okay. Just follow up, Madam Chair. So many business owners and individuals just looking for simple updates and communication, like you said. So if we can really just focus on that this coming year. Last question is, are we still going to be outsourcing, or are we going to be filling the building official position this coming fiscal year?
My goal is to fill all of our vacant building positions as quickly as possible. The first would be our building official position. We had an open advertisement, and we're moving into the interview process for that position now. Once that position is filled, it'll be almost a domino effect as far as having that point person in place that can participate on additional interviews for other open positions, because we do have an open plans reviewer position, we have inspector positions opening. So the city may need to take a different approach as far as recruitment, or maybe where we're sending out job advertisement notifications, things of that nature. I don't know if reaching out to certain trade unions or certain groups within the field that may provide better results. What we found is the applicant pool is relatively small, and the market's very competitive right now. So we need to look to see how else we can leverage what we have to work with to get the best employees employed here at the city.
Madam Chair? This is more of a question just from my own personal knowledge. Taking a look at the salary ranges for some of these positions over in this permitting and building department, how do we address kind of going closer to the higher tier, or even exceeding what we may have marketed? Because this department is actually going to be the heartbeat of where we're trying to go with our city. We're trying to attract businesses. We're trying to develop. We're trying to grow. We're trying to stabilize. But we have to, like I believe Councilman McCoy said, we have to pay the people that we're actually trying to employ. If we want the best, we have to be able to pay them the best. So what would be that process, Madam Chair, or our city manager, or Mr. Sherman? What would be our process for that?
Or increasing the
Would we,
salary scale?
or even going to the higher end of the salary? Because I know some of the concerns we've had is having these positions available, but not actually being able to pay the people that they're actually worth. For example, the building official, some of the people that Mr. Gagnon's looking for.
Yeah, in the absence of the city manager right now, we actually had a conversation relative to the,
And there he is.
I'll pause there and pass the microphone over.
Would you please repeat the question?
I don't even remember what I said.
Mouthful of food.
So our thought process, or my concern, was that more of a question. We're having some difficulty filling a few of the positions in this department, and I know that the issue is that the pool, the talent pool, is very small and they're very competitive. I want us to see how we can be actually more competitive within this talent pool, going maybe higher or a little closer to the top of that pay scale that we may have set for them, and maybe even going a little bit over, just because this right here, this department, is one of our heartbeats of what we're trying to do in the direction for our city. So if we don't have a seamless process in place, online, web-based, I know Tyler, Mr. Gadding said that Tyler's actually up and running to make it a little bit more streamlined. But most of the businesses, most people look at our city and say, oh, I'm not going to work with Riviera Beach because they take forever for permitting, or they never get back to us, or I can't even get a simple permit filled. That's what I want to change, that image, because with a lot of the business owners that I speak with, I want to be able to attract them. So if we can have an actual fully functional permitting and building department, that would be the best bet for us.
Well, I'll handle that particular question twofold. I did have a conversation briefly with Ms. Gaines about the possibility of having a facilitated conversation with the business community and then the board to find out how we can assist in addressing what some of their concerns are with respect to development and how can we better assist and facilitate their processes, and so they know what our code calls for, and how do we work with them to establish those relationships that are so critical if we want to see economic development occur in our city. We are in a very challenging environment right now as it relates to compensation and being able to attract and retain individuals. We have an ordinance in place, and I think all of you are aware of that. In order for anything over 10%, it requires legislative action by the board. One of the items that I'd like to bring to the board to consider is giving the city manager more flexibility and latitude with respect to that, because if we have a candidate that's interested in a position and we have to wait 2 weeks to get it on an agenda and their information is now in the public sphere and those types of things, 9 times out of 10, you run the risk that they're highly employable and you lose them to a prospective another agency. You lose them out. You lose out on that opportunity. So we're looking at that. We're also going to be looking at the compensation and classification study that was completed and taking another fresh look at that, different set of eyes, another perspective to see where we are with respect to the ranges and what are the appropriate ranges that some of these positions are in. With historically low unemployment rates and with the private sector swallowing up all the folks that have the skill sets as it relates to planning and zoning and building, we have to be more aggressive. We have to offer what better compensation packages to be able to attract and, more importantly as well, retain the talent that we have, and we have to be able to move quickly. So here in the next couple of board meetings, I intend to bring that ordinance forward for the purposes of providing more latitude. And also the other side, I think we have to consider of more proactive and aggressive recruiting, going to recruitment fairs, going to make phone calls, going to the county to see if there, or other government entities, are there individuals that we can poach from other agencies to be able to help us round out our team. So we just have to be more aggressive in our employment practices to be able to get the talent necessary to fill some critical vacancies. Because you're absolutely right. We have a situation where a contractual provider is providing services and we want to transition it to where we insource versus outsource.
Follow up, Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
So those fairs and the recruitment, that would be through our HR department. So I think that's on the agenda. We'll talk about that when we get there. But the salaries, how often do we take a look at the actual salary ranges that we're paying our staff and our employees? How often is that actually brought?
I can only speak from previous experience. Traditionally, you want to look at your compensation packages and your ranges every 3 years to find out to see where you are to your market competitors, and no more than 5 years. You need to look at your ranges. I know the city just went through a study where the data was from 2017. The study was completed, I believe, in 2018, and now we sit here in 2019 getting ready to be in 2020, so that particular study probably needs a refresh. I have information that a local community has just gone through a compensation and classification study, so we can extract that information from that entity. But my goal is that once a human resources director is selected, that is one of the projects that they look at compensation holistically and then bring some recommendations to consider for the board here, hopefully in the first quarter of the fiscal year. But the quick resolution to the issue is providing more flexibility for the manager. So in the event that Mr. Gagnon says we have a dynamic individual and they're asking for a little bit more than the minimum, we have the ability to enter into negotiations and bring somebody on board versus a process that takes us before the board where we can lose a viable candidate.
But we do need to look at our compensation because we have some issues that have continued to exacerbate because we have compression issues. The ranges are not moving and there's not separation. And if a new person comes in at 10% and another employee that started 3 years ago is only getting the 3%, you have them where they're hitting up close to each other. So you're not incentivizing those employees that are here in the organization. If they've only gotten the 3%, but the new person comes in at the same position, gets a 10% because that's what the market's bearing. So we've got to look to address the compression and the ranges in our pay plan.
Last follow-up, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
And in addition to that, I just want to make sure that we are being aggressive and moving forward with forward minds and thinking, but also having the mindset to know that there is going to be a turn or a downturn in the market. A recession is imminent, so we have to be very cautious when it comes to that study as well, because increasing these salaries over the next year or two, when we could possibly be seeing a recession coming, that's finally being addressed. We want to make sure that we just do everything and do our due diligence. So we're kind of in a catch-22, but at the same time, go ahead.
And to your point, Councilman, I think we look at positions that generate revenue
Yes.
a little different than positions that don't. So we have to make those priorities.
And that's why this is one of my priorities, because this is actually where we can generate a lot of revenue in our permitting and our billing, permitting and department. So if we can really focus on paying top tier for this department and really focus on building it out properly, we can actually turn those dollars a little bit quicker when it comes to permitting and it comes to our buildings. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next department is Library Services, and Ms. Cynthia Cobb, the Department Director.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm here to present the request for the library, and I see it's here in front of me. The organizational chart for our department includes adult services, youth services, and cultural and research services. The budget itself, we're looking at budget modifications to eliminate 2 part-time positions. One is a part-time page. Page is a term we use for people that shelve books. And the part-time program aide was originally designed to assist with, originally it was designed to assist with our cybermobile when we had the vehicle. And then we reconsidered how we would perhaps use it to assist with youth services, but those 2 positions are part-time. The operating budget for last year, 1.17 million, and of course we're looking at an increase in our operating costs for this year. Primarily in that area, that is where we experience the cost of the security guards. That is relatively new for us, and we don't know at this moment how much our new contracted service is going to cost us for that service, so we're still waiting to see how that's going to impact our budget. There are no new capital projects designated for us for 2020. I want to talk a little bit about our objectives. We really want to keep in the forefront the fact that our building is deteriorating considerably, and the efforts to move toward replacement of our facility is very much a goal that we would like to attain. We will be participating and encouraging library participation with civic organizations throughout Riviera Beach. The Eta Phi Beta Service Sorority is an organization that has found a very interesting service that they offer the community through the library, we wanted to make sure that we kept them engaged in their efforts. We have another initiative where we try to keep a presence with the local Kiwanis group so that we are connected in some way or the other with other services and businesses throughout the community as well. Our meeting room, the conference room on the second floor, is probably one of the most popular spots in the building right now because we offer not only a place for people to meet, but there's also 24 public computers that people can use for computer use and or training. We offer that service also to other city departments as well. The VITA tax services has been an extremely popular service. The United Way group reached out to us a couple years ago, and as the tax season starts, their use of that room, not only for tax services, but they also are using it as a follow-up throughout the year for people who are filing late for various reasons. We do initiate a community effort where we look to engage not only staff but other community people to participate in reading events. Promoting literacy is probably by far one of our strongest suits as well. Our children's librarian coordinates our Jumpstart Read for the Record, and for most of you that are new to what you do, we will be reaching out to you because that event will be coming up in November, and we encourage our elected officials to go out and read to the children in our community as well.
Ms. Cobb, I just wanted to say something about that.
Yes.
Is it possible, I know the last few times we've been getting it kind of late, and we miss it by the time we even know that it's here. Is this given in advance?
We have it.
You have it
It's
now?
November 17th.
Okay.
And it's on that very day throughout the county. And what we'll do is we'll coordinate what is good for your schedule, and we alert the facilities so that they know that you're coming.
Okay,
Go
that'll
that
be
way.
good, as long as we have enough advance notice. 17.
That's not-
Sunday? Not usually
No,
on
it's not.
Sundays, usually during a weekday.
No, it's not the same.
Go to the daycares and stuff.
They go to the daycare centers.
So it must be a different day. You just give us the
Sev-
information. The 17th is on a Sunday, so when you
Well,
get
it
it.
must be it's the 7th, so it must be the
Okay.
7th.
All right,
Is that a Thursday?
Yes.
Yes, it's the 7th.
okay.
Okay. The county also sponsors a countywide read, and we also participate in that as well. We try to encourage our department heads to read as well. If they have employees within their departments that are interested, we purchase a designated number of those titles, and we make those available, and we have book discussions related to them. Our iBorrow program is relatively new. It came as a suggestion or an idea from one of our local vendor reps here with T-Mobile. And what we did with this particular program, we identified 3 schools in the community that we wanted to offer these tablets to. We ran into several little hookups along the way, but thanks to our new IT structure, we are moving forward with it. What we have are 75 tablets that we offer to 2 elementary schools and 1 middle school, JFK, and the students were basically preparing to take the tablets home, use them to help enhance their test scores as they prepare for the school year. But anyway, what we have with that now is the beginning of the school year. People are kind of waiting to get started again, so we have used our connections with the Parks and Rec to introduce the program to the summer program preschoolers. So that's how we got the program off the ground for starting this summer. We are looking to expand our adult computer classes. Right now, they started out as just basic, Computer 101. Now we're expanding it to Excel and some more advanced programs, whereas people are looking to enhance their skills even more. We are very much concerned about internet safety, and one of the requirements for our state aid grant is to offer an ongoing internet safety program for our young people, so that the state and of course the feds also see that we are serious about protecting our young people and as they relate to technology. We participate in numerous national, state, and local professional initiatives. The Florida Library Association, the local, the regional Cephalin, the Southeast Florida Library Association. There's even a Palm Beach County Library Association that kind of draws some of our talent, because we have employees who are very much involved in wanting to make sure that they are up to date on what's going on. I also want to share that we initiated this year our very first business center. We realized that we have people in our community who have needs for copying, printing, faxing, scanning, and the closest Kinko's to us is either 5 miles to the north or 8 miles to the south. And it has really been an overwhelming and very beneficial service that our customers have found. A lot of people that are self-employed use the services to do business with their constituents, and we have been able to identify a method with Canon that we basically explained to them what we were trying to do, and they were able to offer the products that we were looking for. So I say all of that to say that we are a library doing new things in an old building, and we would love to be able to go back to our very first goal of replacing it if we can. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes.
Go ahead. Mr. Evans.
No?
No, I'm going to ask, right?
I know what you're going to ask, yeah.
Could you address that, please?
Certainly. So one of the things that city staff is currently looking at is what's the long-term plan for the library. Currently, we know that the facility is in desperate need of a reconstruction. Ms. Jacobs and I have been working with multiple realtors to identify parcels for the purposes of a temporary solution. I would communicate the parcels that we're looking at with the board in privacy, because obviously we're in negotiations and we don't want that to impact the price as we negotiate with the realtors. But we have found a deal location from our perspective that would be able to accommodate the library for an interim period as we move forward with a construction of a new facility. One of the things that I would like to see us do is, as part of our fiscal year 2020 budget, that we are completely vacated from the existing facility and in the interim facility, so we can move forward with the demolition of this structure and then start to set out how we would like to plan out the next step of our vision for the community with respect to the City Hall campus, the library campus, and how each and every one of those play in. Director Bailey did have on one of his slides that one of the major projects that Public Works and the other departments will be spearheading is making sure that we start putting pen to paper and moving forward with the possibility of bringing a P3 opportunity to the table, similar to that of the Marina Phase 2 project. And so that is some things that we're working on with the intent to bring this before the board. There is a lot of interest in the municipal facilities and some of the development rights that can allow for this particular parcel and the other parcels that we own that are contiguous to this parcel to create the synergy necessary to almost make this a downtown core. But we are looking for a long-term solution for the library, but we have a location that we think temporarily can be a location that is suitable.
We've also kicked around the concept of the possibility of partnering up with an educational institution to utilize some library space from one of our local high schools. But the concern with regards to that is we would not be able to access the site until after school hours. The other side is, how do you ensure the protection of their collection? How would we move our collection? And then ultimately, you would have to change the hours in which our patrons visit the library. So it was a heavy lift that we thought, but we think we have another solution that can benefit the community, and we can even expand some services in that space.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that I'm a fanatic of libraries. I think that when people think of libraries, they think of the librarian, and you go in and check out a book, and that's just it. But they have some very innovative things that are coming out of libraries. They have a program out of the Brooklyn Library where there are actually 2.7 million children who have parents who are incarcerated. And they have programs at their library to have video conferences with the children and the inmates so they can read with their children, but they're in prison. So there are so many innovative ideas to bring to a library, because I think that people always think of libraries as just a place to check out books. There are places that in libraries that people whose licenses are suspended, they have workshops to be able to get them to figure out how to get their license back in effect. They have all types of ways when we talk about our education piece, and we're looking at after-school programs. We're talking about recreation. All of these things flow through the library. So when you think about the library, you can't think of it, when you went to college, or think of it when you were in school. You have to think of it as a community center. It is actually the heart of the community. So if the city is not a social services, in the social services business, so to speak. So we need to be able to address the issues of our residents socially as well, culturally as well, and putting that through the library and making sure that that is a priority for this city is something that I really want us to focus on, because I don't want the city and this board to think of the library the way everybody thinks of a library. So I want that to be a focus for this city in terms of how we're going to move forward with putting our library on the par of other municipalities, because our library is just functional. It does not, it could be so much more in terms of how it provides services to our community. So I want us to focus on that as well.
You're absolutely right, Councilwoman. Libraries now have changed to basically community centers or hubs for people to fill out job applications, resume writing, taxes, all those different things. So it's so critical that we make sure that that space really serves the community in all those different facets. So that's certainly something that we will make sure that that's a long-term, both a short-term and a long-term goal for us as a city.
Have we ever considered, I know the organization SCORE, they go to a lot of the libraries like the Summit Library or Palm Beach Gardens County Library in terms of offering those courses. Have we ever entertained or been approached about having them come and do trainings at our library, or even with like the small business development? I think they're through Palm Beach State. They offer courses there for people, for businesses as well, and a lot of times they have their trainings at the libraries. And then just additional programming. Like West Palm has a robust amount of programs that they have down there. So do we have people that come in and offer trainings? I'm sure they would charge, because mostly it's a charge, but do we have that, or people approach us for that?
We do not have that. One is because our one area that we have in the building is used for so many different things. To commit to one group and deny finance or some other department who needs to conduct some ongoing staff training would just
But this, I'm talking in, mostly those trainings are in the
We
evening.
offer,
some of
and
them.
then we have our classes.
Mhm.
So between that, story time, which is in that same room,
Mhm.
and anything else related to training, usually the best that we can do is offer our facility on the weekends.
Okay.
Because Saturdays is another time that we get a lot of community groups. But throughout the week, Tuesday through Thursday, that story time and whatever else, you know, that we may have committed through.
So
other
Tuesday,
days.
Wednesday, and Thursday, what about the other days? They're pretty open?
Mondays and Fridays, we have community groups, that, and community groups that have, class reunion, committees meeting. This is a hodgepodge of things, so it's getting to the point now, especially now that we only have one facility, one room that we can use, because
Mhm.
the African-American room is no longer available to us right now because of the remediation.
Okay,
So now we're down to
just the one. Okay. Anyone else?
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Ms. Scott, I just wanted to definitely say that the business center that you guys incorporated in the library, that's a great idea. And I would love to see that within our library moving forward and within our plan, because there really is no business center here in our community. I know the CRA had discussions of possibly incorporating like an incubator into the new building, but right now we don't have those services for our residents. So there's people coming to my regular office all the time asking to fax something or just asking to send something off. So that's actually a great program or a great way to implement into the library. Location-wise, facilities-wise, have we discussed possibly separating our library from our main campus, or is that definitely going to be incorporated with the main campus? Is that discussions that we've had?
The original design contemplated the library being part of the main campus, because one of the things that we wanted to do is to create enough foot traffic with all the things that are happening on the municipal facilities to help secure some storefronts as shops, restaurants, those kind of things, if they were incorporated where you would have storefronts on the bottom floor and then city facilities on the top. So we thought that incorporating the library into the overall design would help give us the traffic, additional foot traffic to the campus. So it's something that obviously if the board chooses that they want to relocate it or look at doing satellite campuses, I've seen situations where you would have a main campus and then they would rent out a storefront on the other side of the community that had 2,500 square feet, and it was a smaller type of settings, or it had different study rooms or different amenities. So you can spread out the service where you can have a main campus and then maybe 2 satellite campuses that are smaller, but that's a policy decision that you, the board, would have to make. But
Just what I've seen in other, possibly looking at the P3 option, incorporating that library, maybe even in our CRA or downtown district, having it separate from our regular campus as well, because until we can kind of change the culture of the residents and their disagreement with police, some people don't actually want to go to the library because of the vicinity to how close it is to the police department. Just it's the general culture of kind of some of our youth. So we have to work on that culture and change it, but also incorporating the library into the downtown district where we can actually do like a P3 and having more of an attraction there as a satellite campus or as a main hub somewhere, maybe like downtown on Broadway.
And that's a great point, Councilman. And I believe the original design that was included actually did put the library on the front half of the parcel on where Wells is currently, and then the police department and fire department is tucked back in the back corner, and it's a secured facility. So it's certainly a significant distance from where it stands now, but as we go to plan out, that's a great point that we'll make sure that that's contemplated in the overall design to see whether we keep it on the campus or we look to move it off in its entirety. But we definitely want to make sure that it's has a prominent placement, and we market and promote what we have to offer, just besides, books and the collection.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with also Councilwoman Lanier more, just making it more innovative and making it something like a community center for our residents to actually go to, and programming, working with our parks and recs and giving opportunities for our residents to actually have a reason to go there and services provided. So, yeah, very good. Thank you, Ms. Cobb.
All right, anyone else? All right, thank you, Ms. Scott.
The next department is procurement, and that is led by interim procurement director, Mr. Ricky Little.
So it seems like we're halfway through our slides here. So, we're staying till midnight to get through all of them?
We have a lot smaller departments after the,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, they're smaller, they won't be as long. Good evening.
Good evening.
I got till 1 o'clock, so go ahead.
Yeah, right, she'll be complaining about 10 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
Good
Ricky
evening.
Little, Interim Director of Procurement. As you can see from our organizational chart, we have 4 departments in the procurement department. Procurement, and just as a side note, in the procurement department, we've done over 7,000 POs this fiscal year alone. Procurement card administrations, everybody up there know me and know how aggressive I am with that particular department. I call everybody every single month to make sure that you have your card reconciled, so I'll leave that one as is. Contract administration is an open position in the department. Its role is to actually make sure that all contracts are in terms with the actual contract. In the surplus property department, as a side note, year-to-date, the city has recovered $162,326 in the sale of surplus property. As a budget modification, as you can see, senior procurement specialist position transferred from the USD back to the procurement department. The budget request, we asked for an assistant director. At this point, it's actually unfunded. So basically, at this point, I'll entertain questions that you may have.
All right, do we have anyone that have any questions? Transfer of senior procurement specialist. So the transfer of the senior procurement specialist position, so the person is coming back to you?
The person is actually coming back to my budget. It will
Okay,
still stay in the district, but I'll be paying for the person.
okay. Do you need that person's position back, the physical person back to you?
I believe the district actually has probably more work for that person than I would have. So at this point, it works out fine how it's actually arranged.
Okay, all right. Any other questions from the board?
No, I'll ask later.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I better take that. All right, Utility Special District,
Yes, Mr. Walker.
all right. Good evening.
Evening, Mr. Mayor, Madam Chair, and board members. The utility district is comprised of 4 divisions: administrative, distribution, water treatment plant, and the collection division noted here as the wastewater division. As far as budget modifications, Mr. Little spoke about the first adjustment in the allocation of the positions with that senior procurement specialist. We are also planning to make a transfer of the GIS specialist position to the IT department, and they would also physically go to the IT department but still provide us some support as needed. We've also eliminated 2 vacant water plant operator positions out of our budget. As far as projections for revenue for the upcoming fiscal year, we are are seeing a 3.83% increase over last year's numbers to 28,584,310. And also, we're realizing a projected or anticipated increase in our operating budget of 8.74%. Regarding objectives, the district wants to continue to provide improving our water quality that we're providing to the citizens, and also continue to meet regulatory requirements. We've made great strides in that area as far as streamlining our regulatory compliance. And also, we want to continue to embark on engaging in public education, reaching out to the wider community. We had a few town hall style sessions last year. We also want to look at having more educational material, probably flyers in or the mailers that go out. We want to reach out to schools, see if we can have an impact there in the community through students. And also, we want to look at possibly water conservation programs that will help residents to realize how they can cut back on any bills through proper conservation methods. We also wanted to look at things like our fats, oil, and greases programs that will help our residents to see how they can properly dispose of those materials, and it will help to protect and extend the life of our infrastructure or wastewater collection system. As far as upcoming projects, big projects, new capital projects that we're planning to embark on beginning next fiscal year, the big one is the membrane water treatment plant. That's a big ticket item, and I know we've been discussing that with the board. That will be a market improvement in overall water quality and color and a lot of those issues. It's a different technology, and it is anticipated because to give us more resiliency for future water demand that we're going to come up against, we have to start looking in that direction of embarking on such technology. We have a master plan and implementation plan update, which is going to encompass a lot of the effort around this new plant and also looking at our infrastructure. The last master plan was done in 2012, so we're in need of a critical update. We also have a couple of projects in the Gramercy Park area that are actually tied to the current consent order that we're under, and the health department is eagerly anticipating us moving these projects so that we can help to both improve the quality, upgrade the infrastructure, and also get us off of these consent orders. So that is something that is actually hopefully a reality real soon. And with that, I'll open it to questions.
All right. We have any questions, comments from the board? Just the only thing I wanted to say was I think it just needs to be corrected on the IT with that GIS specialist position. On the USD, it says 2 information technology department, but on the information technology budget modification section, it says transfer 1 GIS specialist position from the IT department.
Okay.
Anyone else? Hey, I had to find something right now. And believe me, that don't happen too often, so I'm gonna take that one. All right, thank you so much, Mr. Walker.
Thank you.
I think they're getting tired. They're getting less and less talkative up here.
All right, let's keep it going. The next one, Miss Eureka Young, is the Human Resources Department.
Eureka Young,
Yes.
change your name? Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I didn't know. That was the word. Hello, Ms. Young.
Thank you. Eureka Young, Interim Human Resources Department Director. The Human Resources Department is comprised of 3 divisions. We have administration, labor relations, and risk management. Our budget modification is to transfer our benefits administrator position from the Human Resources Administration Division to the Risk Management Division. Our operating budget is just a little under a 5% change. We have no capital projects. Some of our objectives for 2020 is the completion of our safety manual. Actually, our safety manual is about 95% completed. We are creating an employee handbook as well as a portal and web page on the, I know we have the portal would be on the Tyler program, as well as a self-service web page for employees. We are also wanting to implement a newer applicant tracking program to incorporate it into our hiring process. And we would love to be able to update and revise our job descriptions. And we also have the employees in the HR department who are currently pursuing certifications in different areas of specialty. And to create a new annual performance evaluation program, or rather install a new annual performance appraisal program for the city. And that is it for HR. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
quick question. Hey, Ms. Eureka, how are you? Recruitment, who's in charge of recruitment in the HR department?
It depends. We have our HR specialist who does the primary recruitment for our general positions, as well as some managerial positions. But most of the recruitment is either split with, and then we have our HR administrator who does recruitment for our public safety positions.
Okay. Mr. Evans, I would love for us to get just a defined individual, somebody specifically catered on recruitment for our organization, because just to have it split amongst a few people, I want to see if we can just focus on that, because those positions need to be filled, and filled with qualified individuals.
Yes, sir.
That's it, Madam Chair.
All right, anyone else? All right, thank you very much.
All right. The next department is the Office of the City Clerk, Ms. Claudine Anthony.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council.
Good evening.
I am Claudine Anthony, the City Clerk for the City of Riviera Beach, and proud to be so. As you can see, the Office of the City Clerk has two divisions, records and election. You all have our handout, so I won't go into all the particulars. I will tell you that we thrive on together each achieve much. So if there are any questions regarding our budget, which has been presented, or our objectives, I'm here to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions or comments? Questions or comments from Ms. Sherwood?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next
You didn't even
department
give me a chance to even figure out if I wanted
is
to ask a question. I'm trying to get my glasses.
the next department is Legal, and the City Attorney, Ms. Dawn Nguyen.
I'll get you next.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council.
Good evening.
Just briefly, for the budget modifications, we had a request for a labor relations attorney to handle HR matters. It is an unfunded request currently. Should you see fit in your budget to provide that for us, we would be most grateful. We spend an inordinate amount of time on HR issues. We have a 1991 code that needs to be revised. It hasn't been codified either. As you know, we have 4 unions. We have workers' compensation claims. We have federal EEOC cases, as well as general HR disciplinary matters. We have currently a complement of 4 staff members, myself, an assistant city attorney, secretary, and a paralegal. The paralegal position is currently not filled, and we are working on filling that. As you know, also, we handle all Contracts for all city departments, utility district, we work very closely with the CRA, the Housing Authority, and again, all work for the utility district and other city departments, as well as advisory to all of you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
What is, how many staff members do you think you would need in order to reduce the amount of outside counsel?
In order to reduce the amount of outside counsel, again, we need at least one HR attorney. We would need, and it depends on how much you want to reduce it by, and I haven't looked at that, totally, but we definitely would need a litigator to handle the personal injury cases. We have a lot of outside counsel fees for land use attorneys, but that's a specialty. I would not necessarily suggest bringing someone in to do that. But those are, of course, workers' comp. I wouldn't suggest bringing that in as either. We have a lot of cases, but they aren't that expensive as to compared to some.
Well, I would like to see what the numbers are for having the labor relations. I know we've been talking about that for a while, so what it would be, what the cost would be for the labor relations attorney, and then for the litigator. You have the labor relations amount?
We would have to, I think Mr. Sherman may have that information, but to build on that, as the city attorney stated, that would be a huge benefit to the organization.
Yeah.
And allow for them to serve as the chief labor negotiator as it relates to employment contracts, and being able to provide some insight and some clarity with respect to what's going on in contractual negotiations, and insourcing that versus a situation where if we need to get contract interpretation, we have to track down the attorneys that have not negotiated the contract, and you have different attorneys. So it would be a great help to, I know, the city manager's office and to the department heads, but also the city attorney's office, because on employment issues, things are in such a litigious society, we're always bouncing concepts and ideas off of legal concerning employment issues. So.
Yeah, I know that particular position has been something that's been coming up for a while, and there's been a desire to bring that on from the legal department for quite a while now. So I would certainly support that labor relations attorney position. If you can also find out about the litigator position to see what that would cost, because as long as I've been up here, it's always been the desire to try to decrease outside counsel, but just have never been able to do that, and that has been a lot of money goes out the door, and I just want to see how can we decrease that as much as possible.
And I think the other side is we also gain so much more efficiencies from the standpoint when we want to have executive sessions with the board, we have to see when the attorneys
When
are
they're
available.
and then we have to pay for them to travel and all of that extra stuff. Yeah. So those are my concerns for those two items there. Anyone else?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So where's that item? Do we not budget for that, these outside counsels?
We do budget for professional services, and Mr. Sherman can provide you what our number is for professional services if you give us a quick moment.
No, well, if it's not in her budget, I mean, if it's not in the city attorney's budget, but,
It's your
Yeah.
contracts.
Yes.
It's $125,000 per year for 2020.
Plus the 75 for
Um,
labor.
I'm sorry.
Plus 75 for labor attorneys in the HR budget.
so 120 gets us there?
Well,
200 gets us there.
Yeah, 200 gets us there.
With
We
the
have
HR.
125 in the city attorney's budget, and then we have 75 in the HR department's budget for legal services, for contract negotiations.
Have we been exceeding that? Because that doesn't seem like a whole lot.
I'm sure we have.
Like,
I almost
I mean, just
certainly-
roughly, how,
We don't exceed it. We just worked with what we have to do what we need to do.
That money comes from somewhere, I know it.
that doesn't make me feel comfortable, because that makes me think, okay, when we're getting about $100,000 now, we gotta we have to now concede our position on certain issues. That doesn't even sound right. I mean, because I'm just thinking. I literally go into the office and I know that they're working on cases. It was my idea that 2 was probably better, knowing that we'll probably end up, somewhere over that. But it's a lot for our administration, especially when we have to, I guess the other thing too, I want to bring this up. I probably should bring it up now, but I don't believe, members, that anyone encompass what the charter restriction means for council members and the mayor when it comes to getting things done, right? I think that prohibition doesn't apply to the city attorney's office, but certainly to city administration. We shouldn't have to bog down our top 2 administrators to do routine constituent things. So that's something that I certainly want to see if there's a position that we can perhaps not necessarily budget for, but perhaps, restructure a certain position that someone is the liaison to deal with, constituent issues and matters that we have that we want to address to different departments, that falls within the city manager's authority or even within the attorney's authority to some extent. But I first of all want to see that, and then I just go back to the original point. I just don't know how we can do all of the litigation, because have we been in a situation where we actually recoup attorney fees from opposing parties for litigation? I mean, has that ever happened?
I'm sure it's happened, but not in the 8 months that I've been there.
And even the other point of when we do these forfeitures, there's a provision that allows us to recoup attorney fees from that. Is that something that we've pursued?
We have not received any thus far. And
But
we have outside counsel who handles the forfeiture cases for us.
But, whatever that forfeiture amount is, does that then get credited back to the city attorney's budget?
No.
Because does it come out of your budget?
The attorney's fees for forfeiture cases, like Alden Robinson, comes out of my budget. However, when they receive funds, they go back into the police budget.
Right.
Okay, all right. That's all I have on that.
I have a question about the contract services. So you said 125 comes out of legal, is for legal.
That's what's projected for 2020.
Right, and so going back, in 2017, actual was 15,000. This is probably more of a Mr. Sherman's question. So 2016 actual was 11,000. 2017 actual 15,000, and then 2018 was 125,000 on page 240. What caused that big jump?
Prior to 2018, the fees were partially budgeted under the police department and partially budgeted under code. And in that year, we brought all the fees under the attorney's office.
Why was it broken out into those departments?
Well, again, that was just the tradition. They each went out, they each had their own counsel, they each ran their own cases. And again, at that point, the thought was to bring them all back put them under in one house under the city attorney.
And previous to that, it was that we had situations where department directors were
going to
out-
get their own attorneys.
Exactly,
Okay.
and we decided
Okay.
to say the city attorney
Yeah,
should
it's coming
approve.
back to me now.
Yeah.
Okay. I got you. All right. Anyone else?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just a quick question. The CRA council and the city council, are we required to have 2 separate councils for CRA and city?
I don't know. You know?
I have seen it where one attorney has served.
West Palm has.
Yeah, I have seen where one attorney serves both.
Okay. So have we ever looked at possibly bringing Oliver Legal, because we're doing utility, we have the utility district, we have the city. Have we talked about possibly bringing Oliver Legal under one umbrella?
We haven't had that discussion, but that's certainly something that if it's the pleasure of the board, that can be certainly explored and undertaken.
I just know that we're looking to cut costs, and I know that we're looking also to just be on one unified front. So having everything since under one umbrella may be something that we could possibly look at to see what kind of savings we'd have.
respond?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if that's a good idea. I mean, not that our department is incapable, but what I look at is that's a separate entity, right? We've budgeted on that side. I don't want to add another department to the city attorney's office to have some sort of oversight on, because if you look on the city's website, the thing that I look at when I look at the city attorney's webpage or page, it says that they provide advice to, I think it's almost 19 departments, right? The CRA is pretty unique, and I think we really muddy the waters if we bring counsel from the CRA over to have that work done in-house in our department. I think there should be some separation.
I think, well, with finance is currently providing the financial services for the CRA, right?
Correct.
Finances,
And
everything.
so with legal, if anything, you would be able to add positions into the legal department here and cut cost over on the other, you know, I mean, we wouldn't just put the whole
Yeah.
department on them and say you gotta do this with just the two people you have already. Obviously, you would
It'd
be
be
able
filled
to
with additional
increase.
positions.
Could
right.
we have a workshop to discuss that whole topic,
Well,
rather than, I mean, it's just,
Well,
I think
hold on.
it deserves.
Miss, is Claudia here? Are we working on, we're not working on the 10 o'clock deadline, obviously not, because we don't have a clerk.
Not on a workshop.
she left, so.
Right, so we're on
Deadline
our own.
applies to
Just,
her.
No, we're not.
she left just for a sake of, making sure that we are in compliance.
Right.
Madam Chair, if we can get a motion to extend the meeting for 15 to
Well,
20 minutes.
she can just make that, since we can't vote. You just go ahead and make
Yeah.
Make
We're
your
just gonna
determination.
continue.
Do it by consensus.
Yeah, consensus to
we're-
proceed.
No one is saying they are ready to leave. But we're all ready, we're gonna continue.
Okay.
All right,
I do-
so.
I'm sorry.
but-
I
What were you
do,
saying?
I do think that this topic of CRA and city needs a workshop. And so all of these questions about legal and so on need to be discussed in greater detail than we have
Well-
time for this evening.
I'm gonna, if I can say this one last thing, in response to that concern, if we were to bring the amount of money, well, bring the fees that we would spend on an attorney on the CRA side under the city attorney's office, what does that add back to the city? What does that add back to our general coffers? Absolutely nothing, because as we know, and we addressed this in our very first CRA budget meeting, there are a lot of programs that I want to see outcomes. The CRA is so unique, right? I don't want to be excuse my language, a welfare or a social services city where everything is this program and that program. We need to have measurable outcomes. I just don't know how bringing an attorney under the city side would then add any additional revenues or any essentially benefit to the city. The only thing I see the CRA doing is finding another way to reallocate that for programs that may or may not be useful in totality, so.
It won't be a reallocation. If we want to cut the budget, we cut the budget. I mean, we would be saving.
Yes.
Right, but we would save on that side, but that doesn't essentially.
Well, to her point.
I
mean,
agree-
obviously,
yeah, I
this is
agree
something
with
we
the-
do need to have a conversation
agree with
about.
Dr.
Have a
Botelho.
joint
Yeah.
meeting.
And Madam Chair,
workshop.
how I would envision the situation if that was to come under the city attorney's office, you would charge the portion of that person's time to the CRA.
Right.
And the other time would be charged to the city. So in essence, you would get a benefit on the city side because the general fund's not going to absorb the entire
Right.
cost, and you'd get a benefit on the CRA side. And that attorney can be utilized for a lot of other things versus just pigeonholing them in working just for the CRA. So there is a certain
Right,
benefit
yeah.
to offset the cost. So if the board said we wanted to go forward with labor relations and then we wanted to look to incorporate another attorney, that can be the one that is split, that does half CRA and half whatever the city attorney thinks is appropriate.
Right.
Okay.
You good?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. The next item is
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
city administration, and if I can have the Assistant City Manager, Ms.
We're
Deirdre
almost-
Jacobs, present this item.
We can't make motions in the workshop.
Motion for dinner.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Remember, we took a recess for about 25 minutes. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Deirdre Jacobs, and I'm the Assistant City Manager here at the City of Riviera Beach. I'll be presenting for our department, our departmental overview this evening. We are comprised of the City Manager's Office, Youth Empowerment, Justice Service Center, and Civil Drug Court. We're all here this evening with the exception of Youth Empowerment. Mrs. Grimsley is out of town for the evening. What I was going to do is ask that the Justice Service Center and Civil Drug Court agency managers come up front first to deliver the pieces of the departmental overview that deals with their particular agencies.
All right.
Thank you and good evening, council. It's been a
Good
long
evening.
evening, I should say, but always the best is for last.
That's right.
The Civil Drug Court, we have 3 full-time positions and a part-time position and 2 full-time grant-funded positions. There's no requested, we have no budgeted requests this year. There's some things that the city manager and the Civil Drug Court are working through with some renovations that are taking place in the Port Center. I am really excited to say that the presentation of the 5 strategic areas of focus of your retreat, I'm excited about it. And I'm excited because a few of those areas during that presentation are some of the things that the drug court have implemented and are working on for the upcoming fiscal year. So I'm really excited on some of the goals, such as goal 1.1 on the operating excellence and goal 3.2. We are already in the process in doing some of those things. So that brings me excitement about that. If there are any questions, I'm here to address them at this time.
Any questions for Civil Drug Court?
You got a slide up there?
Slide?
No.
No,
No, it's all under.
just that one right there is all on that one. They're part of the city administration.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
could you just give us an overview of what your department does?
Absolutely.
If you, our Citizens Leadership Academy went into great detail on that one.
I think that's of that excellence.
This
I
is
think
the
that
first
falls in
crash
the
course
3.3.
tonight.
Point of order,
Falls
point
in
of
the
order, point of order.
3.3 goal.
No, this is for the benefit of, I know what you do. This is for the
Yes,
benefit of the
yes,
public
of
so they
course.
understand what you do.
We got you, Miss Lanier.
Absolutely, Councilwoman. Just a quick overview. Basically, we process Marchman Act petitions, and Marchman Act petitions are a petition that deals with individuals involuntarily who have substance abuse issues. So we have hearings, assessment hearings, and treatment hearings on the weekends, but those petitions are focused strictly on, first, substance abuse, and then second, mental health.
All right. Anything else?
Where does the, I'm sorry, where does the, you're not with the reentry program, that's with the.
That's separate. We
Okay,
do
that's-
some services for the reentry program, though,
Okay. Okay.
such as their assessments of their clients. We may conduct, should they send the referral to us, and possibly some UAs,
What is that?
urinalysis
Okay.
drug tests.
All right, very good. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
My name is Ori Bullard. I'm the Director of the Reentry Center. And the mission of the Reentry Center is to provide non-traditional comprehensive reentry support services to residents that are coming back to the northern end of the county. And so we have 6 staff, and basically we have 2 staff that'll be covered by the city budget and 4 staff that are covered by the county budget under the Public Safety Department. And so we have a few goals that we're looking to achieve this year. We want to increase our pre-release and get client engagement through family and community involvement, quarterly reentry awareness, community events. Some of you all came out to our last event when we had the reentry escape room, which was We had about 75 folks that come out to that. We're also working with the CDC through our Neighborhood Reclaim Project. And so essentially what it does is it takes abandoned homes, and we have a crew that will go in, rehab those homes, and then the CDC will sell it to a first-time home buyer. And so we just started that project, and we're looking to expand that as we move into next year. And we'll also have, a part of that is a 10-week MRT training. They'll receive other wraparound services throughout that project. So while they're doing those 10 weeks, they'll be able to kind of get some family engagement. We also partner with the CDC, so they'll provide drug tests and some of those other ancillary services throughout. And that's all I have. If you all have any questions, feel free.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Madam Chair,
Go
the
ahead.
reentry program, so the people who come to you are Riviera Beach residents?
Yes,
All
we
of
have.
them, or
Well, we have Riviera Beach residents, but we're also open to everyone north of Riviera Beach also. So because we're county funded, we will work with anyone
I
that's
see.
Palm Beach Gardens, Jupiter, Riviera Beach, Lake Park, North Palm Beach, any areas in the northern end.
do you have any information or an estimate of the number of inmates released from prison who come back to the 334040 area code
I can get a number for you, based on an annual basis or
annually?
I can get a number for you,
Okay, that would be interesting to know.
but roughly about 35%. We work with about 100 clients per year that are coming back, and I would say about 35% of those are Riviera Beach residents.
And it's all state prison?
All state prison, but we do have a few federal inmates, also federal clients.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening again. As I mentioned earlier, Mrs. Grinley is not here to represent the Youth Empowerment Center. Her agency is made up of 4 employees. There are 2 part-time program aides. She serves as the director, and there's 1 full-time program aide. She receives grant dollars from the county at $180,000 a year. Unfortunately, that particular grant, it runs out at the end of this particular fiscal year that is coming up. It pays for 2 of her part-time positions. It pays for her summer youth internship persons. It also pays for her after-school programming services. With regards to city administration, our department at this particular time is made up of 3 persons: the city manager, the assistant city manager, and there's 1 executive assistant position. It is hopeful that we'll be able to add at least 2 other positions within our particular department. With regards to the objectives, do you want me to go through each one of them to explain them to you, or do you want to answer questions that you might have of our department?
I just
Do
have a
you all
que-
just want to ask questions?
Just ask
of each-
questions, Madam
okay.
Chair.
All right,
Madam Chair.
go ahead.
What are the 2 positions, Ms. Jacobs, that you're looking to have filled?
Hopefully we'll have a deputy city manager position, and that particular person will have someone to assist them. There may even be an opportunity wherein we would be able to provide another position that's quasi-administrative as well to assist us.
Okay, so a deputy and an assistant to the deputy?
That would be an assistant to the city manager.
Okay. And if you could just give a quick, brief overview of the role and the functions of the deputy city manager and the assistant city manager?
I will speak to the roles and responsibility of the deputy city manager and the assistant city manager. My intent is for the deputy city manager to be the, pretty much the individual that works on economic development in the city, to focus on making sure that we are aggressive and progressive in our strategies as it relates to economic development, to emphasize on relationships in Tallahassee, to track legislation, to update the board on what's happening with respect to both the state and federal issues that we're working on. Also, the other side of the responsibilities would assist in some capital project management to ensure that the capital improvements plan that we put forward for the board to consider, that departments are making sure that we're going through the appropriate protocols to manage the over $200 million in some case capital project. The assistant city manager's roles and responsibilities would be focusing on the day-to-day operations of the city, working with the deputy and the manager to make sure that, you know, emails are being responded to from residents, that things are running smoothly on the internal side of the operations. The executive assistant position that currently resides in the department, we have a vacancy, and it's the executive assistant to the city manager. We have recently interviewed for that position, and my belief is that I need to look to make that position, upgrade that position to maybe an assistant to manage a lot of the grant functions, to have more of a professional set of responsibilities and duties in the manager's office. They would still help with some of the clerical functions, but be more versed on managing some of the communications that happens throughout the city, pursuing grant opportunities, managing our website from the content perspective, really giving that person an opportunity to focus on things that are high-level projects, but something that the city manager, the assistant city manager, the deputy can't really prioritize. And similar to the inquiries that Councilman McCoy has, somebody that helps work with the board if there's any issues that they're receiving from their constituents, that person knows which department to handle and could assist in tracking some of the questions and inquiries that you have on a regular basis. So they will kind of be that go-between, working with your constituents, working with your legislative assistants to assist in making sure that some of the small things are addressed and they don't fall by the wayside.
Thank you. Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
That was actually exactly where I was going with the assistant to the city manager with that grant oversight, and having somebody that actually can champion that. And just like Boynton came in with their assistant city manager that's kind of championing their capital projects, possibly focusing on with the deputy position on somebody, possible engineer, or somebody that can focus on those capital improvement and really oversee and give oversight for that, so we can have kind of dual roles with these positions that we're filling. So that assistant, I would love for them to kind of just be the captain for that grant programming with everything else that's needed for the assistant too, and then the deputy just letting them oversee the project. So very good. Thank you.
Okay, so you said deputy city manager and another assistant city manager?
No, it would be a assistant to the city manager, a lower level. Right now, we have an executive assistant to the city manager position that's vacant. So we would slightly upgrade that position, and the requirements would, you'd have to have a graduate degree, and you would manage a lot of other functions. So it wouldn't be your traditional clerical secretarial position. It would assist with the clerical responsibilities and duties, but they would be more so handling grants administration. They would be handling some of the day-to-day issues that we get sometimes from some of our council members, to return phone calls from constituents, go out to community meetings if we can't be present, or those types of things.
Okay, so just the deputy city manager and the
Assistant, too.
assistant. Okay. Executive assistant too.
Madam
All
Chair,
right,
so what is the hierarchy of this? How does this work?
It would be the city manager, deputy city manager, and then the assistant city manager. The assistant too would be like at the same level as your some of your mid-level managers or coordinators within the city. So they wouldn't be in the leadership structure as far as if the city manager is absent or the assistant city manager is absent, or the deputy, they wouldn't be the one that would be running the operation. It would be kind of a set aside. So it would be city manager, deputy city manager, and then the assistant city manager. So it would be three in that leadership structure. It's the structure that we've had in place before
Right.
in this agency.
Right, yeah. Yeah, we did have
Yeah,
those
and they would
three.
handle a couple of special projects. One of the things that I think we certainly need to do a better job on is surveying the community. We have plenty of opportunities to utilize, a lot of opportunities to utilize SurveyMonkey for the purposes of getting community input and feedback, and
having somebody manage that process and some of the communication pieces, working with Walter and his team to be aggressive and proactive in our marketing and in promoting the city and those things. So it would be, that assistant too is a junior level position. And traditionally, and I have been in that position in my career, usually you want your assistant two to be here for 2 to 5 years with the intent that they move on to become an assistant city manager or city manager at a small city, those types. So it's an opportunity to groom someone for that next career step.
All right, question?
No, that's.
All right, anyone else? All right, thank you.
I really don't mind if you want me to go over some of the objectives, I can.
You can go over a couple of them.
Okay, if we start.
This meeting?
Are you sure,
I'm
Ms.
sorry.
Lanier?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Sure. The first one deals with personnel vacancies. Just want to let you know that city administration is really interested in bringing in staff persons that are, as Mrs. Gaines mentioned, qualified, credentialed, and committed to the organization. It is our desire to work with recruiters, professional recruiters, to assist us with bringing in, we know for a fact now we have about 7 interim director positions to make sure that those positions are filled with persons that can actually bring some value and just some good leadership here to the city of Riviera Beach. So that's one of our primary goals, and you'll notice at the end of this week, I believe it's the procurement director as well as the human resources director position that will be advertised.
I want to ask you a question. So how, is it just advertised at the local level, or are you doing a national search?
No, ma'am. It's my understanding and working with the city manager as well as the human resources, the interim human resources director, that those particular advertisement will go out on a national basis.
They will?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You want to go over some more? The bullet?
One more.
Okay.
Which one? Which one in particular?
I'm here.
Yeah, me too.
There's one that deals with training and technical assistance to our elected officials
Yes, that's the
and volunteers of boards and committees. What we like to do is to make sure that when you govern, that you govern accordingly and that you truly understand the meaning of how to govern and what you're charged with, what you're charged with doing, or how you should conduct yourselves in a state-of-the-art or a higher level capacity whenever you come to provide your leadership or your elected officials services on behalf of the residents. So what we like to do is to provide many different training opportunities, as well as not only for you, but for our boards and committees as well. I've noticed that in particular with our planning boards, I'm not sure that I really feel comfortable with them understanding exactly what it is they're supposed to do when they come on board. It is absolutely necessary for us as staff to let you know, to train you ahead of time, to help you to understand what your roles and responsibilities are. Over time, you will eventually learn, but there is a learning curve, because we all know that there are certain disciplines that not only come with practice, but the theory that is involved as well. And if you're not apprised of those particular variables or essentials that deals with those theories, then you would never know, and it would probably take a longer time for you to be able to perform in the way that you actually should. So it's our desire to help you, to educate you as much as possible with regards to your roles and capacities, and to govern accordingly.
Madam Chair, if I may kind of build on that as well. One of the things that we want to do is to offer all the training that you are required by statute to have here. So when you do attend your conferences, such as the Florida League of Cities, you're spending the opportunity in some other sessions that you can be able to glean a benefit from. In addition to offering it here, we will attract other municipalities to come here and get the training locally versus having to go to Tallahassee to get your ethics training, Form 1, you know, all the things that you as elected officials are required to do, sunshine law training. But also, one of the things that I think is important is when we offer those trainings here, you can now require any member that is appointed to your boards to get that training. And a lot of cities have required that you go through sunshine law training, ethics training, and some basic governance training. And even in some other cities, you have to go through their Citizens Academy or their leadership training before you're ever considered as an applicant to an advisory board. And so I think that that's something big picture that the board should consider, especially when we start offering the trainings here, that if you want to seek an appointment from this council, that there is some prerequisites that you need to complete, because you're going to get a better quality board person that is focused and committed in the training, and to understand that you all operate in the sunshine, and it's profoundly different than other boards they may have served on in the past. So we want to bring all the training here locally, and then ultimately you would be able to, when you go to conferences, you can focus on some of the substantive sessions versus the training that you're required, or the elements that you have to get as it required by statute now, your ethics training. And
I just wanted to say one thing, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I'm also concerned about, as you said, the board that, or the committees that serve for the city of Riviera Beach. I've been on 3 boards for the city of Riviera Beach, and when I became a member, I just showed up at the meeting. There was no onboarding, there was no, this is what you do, there was nothing for me. And you just had to come to the first meeting and try and figure out what was your responsibilities. And I know we've had some issues with some of the boards, especially some of our ad hoc boards that we do for specific reasons. There's just, you take 6 meetings to do bylaws. There's just nothing concrete for, remember that? Nothing concrete for boards to be able, and those are the things that we need to make sure of, because these boards do the work that you don't have to hire anybody to do. So if they're not, if they have to meet for a specific call and it take them a whole year to do it when it could take them 3 months, then that's the difference between getting work done and just kind of showing up to a meeting just to meet.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
that was how I felt with coming on board as a commissioner. So succession planning is something that we need to really focus on, especially with us having term limits in our charter, and with all these boards and even department heads, just that process and that training for every single facet of this government. I want to make sure that we have a process in place with that succession training.
Yes, sir. I think what has happened with our organization is we haven't been as grounded as maybe we could be. And when you take on different activities like that, you have to be fundamentally sound. And I think what we've done is just tried to operate in the best space that we could operate in, given the circumstances. As soon as we become solid and more foundationally sound, we'll be able to take on activities where we won't have to be so reactive.
Agree. Anyone else?
Yes, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
One last thing, so the training piece, does that mean you guys cover our travel for Legal Cities?
you wouldn't have to pay anything for training.
You wouldn't have to go anywhere.
You wouldn't have to go anywhere.
Would you at least give us something to eat?
Yeah, because they'll be pretty long trainings, yeah. All right, the next department is Finance and Administrative Services, and Director, Mr. Randy Sherman.
And it feels
Good
good to
evening.
stand up. Good evening. For those who have been to the Citizens Leadership Academy, you know that under finance we have 3 divisions. We do billing and customer service, which is primarily utility district, although we do stormwater and the trash collections as well. We have a treasury division, and we also have a financial services division. We're not looking for any modifications coming into 2012. We have 30 staff now, and we have a number of vacancies, but our complement for next year remains 30. I won't go through all of the objectives up there. Primarily, If you want to go back to the first presentation of the night, we are goal number 4 on your list. That's pretty much explains what the finance department is trying to do. I would like to use this opportunity, though, to kind of give you a little update on Tyler. It's been touched here and there through the night. Within the next 5 weeks, if all goes well, we will be going live on the payroll system and human resource system. We will then immediately jump from that into the utility billing system. We're currently also in the process of implementing the Parks and Recs module. And the more I look at the Parks and Recs module and some of the discussions that we've had tonight, I think it's going to be a fantastic marketing tool because you'll be able to not only rent rooms, but get into programming, select your program, register your students, register your kids for, football program. I also think we'll be able to use it for the library. I think we're going to be able to use it for youth empowerment. The more we go through and start to look at the system, I see other departments being able to use it. We're also working in participation with the CRA on that module because they're going to convert over at the event center and start using it again for their rentals. And then we also have coming in September, we will have vendor self-service, which means, as Mr. Gagnon said, a lot of our time and phone calls is dealing with vendors. Is my check ready? Did you get my invoice? Those types of questions, you'll actually be able to do that all online. They'll be able to submit us invoices online. They'll be able to see if their check has been cashed or where it may be stuck in the process, maybe waiting for an approval. And then when we go on the human resource package, we will also have the employee self-service. So the employees can go in, put in their own changes, change of address, change of phone number, those types of changes, to be able to change their deductions. They'll be able to, similar to what the school district has, get your own notice of deposit, get your own W-2, and those types of issues. And at that, I'll stop on finance and take any questions that you may have.
Questions or comments from finance? The finance man left. Mr. McCoy?
Oh, just a quick question.
Yes.
Madam Chair. Just a quick question. This relates probably to Mr. Gagnon's area, but when he was speaking earlier about his ability to simultaneously put permitting out there, if I'm in the Publix, if I'm in Publix and someone says to me, I've had a permit for my house in there for 2 months, I'll be able to pull it up on my iPhone and say, I can see right now that it's in so-and-so's office, and I can check and be sure, right?
Absolutely.
That's very
'cause
cool.
It'll all be PCN attached. You'll be able to call up a particular property, see if there's any permits, look at the water bill, see if, whatever happens with that property. Tyler itself is more, typically you think of an ERP as a finance system. Tyler is more of a land-based system, and it's based over, land is at the center of the universe in Tyler, and then everything is an offshoot of that. So yes, you'll be able to sit there and see those issues.
And when will that?
Yeah, I was
When
gonna
will that
ask my
happen?
question.
Well, it's been going on for quite a while. They're currently working on some forms, to get the forms used to what they want. The real issue we've had right now is with the GIS system and getting the two systems linked, which is critical because you can't obviously have a land-based system if you can't get the GIS to work. So that's probably more so on our side than on Tyler's side. But obviously we're working together to get that to work.
Any other questions? CPA? None from you? All right. Thank
Okay.
you, Mr. Sherman.
I will real quickly also go through the marina. Again, as you know, Seven Kings manages the arena for us, so their projections again continue to increase. I'll tell you, when we entered into the contract, we have a minimum monthly management fee of $4,500. Typically, what we're paying to them is 3 to 4 times that amount every month. It's based on their revenues that they're bringing in. They're performing outstanding down there. What they are looking for now, after 4 years, is to get a little improved security. and actually start working on maintaining the systems and, again, dealing with the appearance. Things are getting a little tired, especially the piles, because they rub up and down. So they're looking to put sleeves on the piles to protect those, and actually put some security gates on certain docks. So that's their capital that they budgeted, but again, they're looking at about a 4% increase in their revenues.
How was the fuel? Are we doing fuel over there?
The fuel or the fuel building?
Fuel.
The fuel, they do sell fuel there, and again, they're exceeding their budgets every year. Because the advantage that they have, that when we operated as a solo, or as in a little silo, is their marketing up and down the coast. If you go to one of their other facilities, you can, or if you're a member at one of their other facilities, you actually get to come over here for nothing. If you're here, you get to go to their facilities for nothing. So we get a lot of cross memberships and rentals now. So again, a lot of people have, I'll say, found our marina as a result of dealing with Seven Kings. So the fuel sales are obviously a major. It's probably 20% or so of that, the revenue budget comes in is strictly fuel.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if we were to implement a managed mooring field, would they be the people likely to manage it?
Them or whoever,
Yeah.
Whoever manages the facility going forward, but yes.
Anyone else? All right, thank you.
Okay, and
Mr.
I
Chairman.
also tried to take a crack at a parking budget, based on the information that the consultants have provided. We're looking at maybe 9 months being able to operate next year. Spoke to Mr. Gagnon this morning again about the ordinances. We did try to put a little bit of money in the budget to maybe get some assistance on drafting those ordinances. But again, these numbers are really, they're based on what the consultant was providing us, but until we come in and we set rates and we set hours and those types of things. So this is very fungible. I would also point out, though, that several years ago when we entered into the most recent lease agreement over at Ocean Mall, they did pay the city a sum of money that was to be put in place specifically for parking. So we actually have about $90,000 that we've been holding for the last couple of years. That'll obviously roll in here and help us pay for the capital and get the operations up and running. But that was our shot at a parking budget for year one.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is very exciting to have this in here to try to move forward with this. Personnel just seems kind of low, but of course you're just kind of, freestyling what we're going to go with.
Yeah, what I did is one person for 9 months. It was maybe ultimately we find out we need more as it gets going, but it was first year.
Right, absolutely. But no, this looks phenomenal. This is good because this should definitely generate some good revenue for the city, so thank you.
Anyone else? All right, thank you.
Okay. And now your budget.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, this is my favorite department.
And of course. This is
Just
where
want
we
to say
make all of the cuts, right?
we are funding the entire council. We appreciate them, and so there is no budget modifications that are being proposed. That is certainly under the purview of this board, and if you would like more opportunity to discuss that, that's something that you can certainly bring up. The next slide just breaks down what each of your individual budget looks like when you break down all the line item costs associated with it. And for your objectives, those will obviously change as we have just gotten the report from Mrs. Gaines, and we'll work to incorporate those in the final document.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
could we take a look at what other municipalities spend for car allowances for legislative personnel? And see if this is in line. And could we take a look at what other municipalities spend for legislative aids and whether or not each council person in other municipalities has a legislative aid and have a conversation about that.
Well, the news already said we're the
I'm a-
only city that has AIDS mostly, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to have, and maybe this is not the right time at almost 11:20 at night to do it, but I think we should have a conversation about what we spend on cars and aids. So we don't have to do it tonight.
Doc,
We don't have to do it tonight.
I'm gonna tell you right now, this is more than I thought it was, because we've only been elected for 5 months, and we've had more meetings than any other city has had in an entire year, just in the short time that we've been on. Now, if you're gonna have that conversation, direct staff to go back and also tally up the number of events and the amount of commitments we have with just the CRA side, the city side, the USD side, and not every single thing that we have. I mean, then we have these other committees that I've not even been able to faithfully attend, which I've tried to commit, but I've been here since 2 o'clock. I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm not in support of giving back that money. So if you wanna know for your purposes, I think more importantly, I wanna figure out how do we, I guess, streamline some of the stuff that happens in and around the legislative budget, because, similar to what Mr. Lawson said, I don't think we've gotten a complete onboard, and we're still learning stuff right now today. So if you think your car allowance is too much, why don't you go ahead and divvy that up among those that are working individuals that's trying to make it work. But we really give up a lot as working professionals. Let me tell you where my day started today. I started first thing this morning. I was at public safety before Mr. Evans got there. I left to have an hour break, and I came back at 11:30 for the city clerk's event. Then I came back again at 2 o'clock for our meeting regarding insurance. Then I left for only about another hour, then had to come back for our 4 o'clock appointment for pictures. And I've been here ever since. So if you want to give yours up, go right ahead. But I mean, with some level of reasonability. And then the other thing regarding legislative aids, there comes an issue, and I think this probably started when they adopted legislative assistance. I don't necessarily know if I want, and nothing to any of our members, because I think we are the best council, but I don't want my aid to be your aid, because there's going to be some conversations that I have to have with my staff person that may target a specific area of my community and my interest that may not be your, and then it happens to be some sort of inherent potential for sunshine law violations. You see what I mean? If we all had the same person working. So I'm gonna tell you this, after being here 5 months, I realized some things just won't work. And if we can draw the line in the sand on insurance and some of this other stuff, don't nickel and dime me, because what we get right here at the city, we can never, ever be able to compensate us for the amount of time that we commit to serving the people in Riviera Beach. So, and it's certainly never intended to be personal, but I want to have a serious conversation that travel, I mean, I just think that that's a reasonable, given what we've been placed in.
Madam Chair? I thought we was gonna have a discussion about this at a separate
We can't, it's too late to do this.
opportunity, because it's almost 11 o'clock, and
Well, this is the last one. We're done.
we gotta go to work in the morning.
But I wanted to ask this: where is our receptionist? Is she included in this budget?
She's in city administration's budget.
Okay, so this is purely elected officials and staff when it says salaries.
That's correct.
All right, so we can revisit this. You're going to bring the line item for each of the departments anyway.
Yes.
And we'll be able to slash, increase in certain areas, whatever you would like to do. We can do that when we have the line by line item.
Will we have dinner on that meeting?
Hopefully, we won't be here as long for that night.
We will- that meeting, we will have some refreshments for the board.
And when do you, okay, so we have a meeting on the 26th, on Monday, so that would consist of what? The 26th meeting?
I didn't hear you.
What will that be consisting of?
The 26th meeting will consist of the capital improvements plan, any modifications that we have made since the discussion here with the board. And then the line item budget will be provided. And then at the conclusion of that, we would take any final direction from the board for the purposes of finalizing the document that we would publish to the public. And then we would get right into the discussion on the health insurance.
Okay. All right, so you're gonna send the line item to us before the meeting? So we have it, okay.
Madam
And then
Chair?
Yes,
So when are we gonna have that legislative discussion about budget? Is that gonna be at the next meeting?
on the 26th, on Monday, right? With the line item?
Or as far as your legislative,
Oh, you're
budget.
talking about the workshop discussion?
Well, this was the last thing on here, so I'm kind of just wanted to make sure that we were clear moving forward. Like, I know it's kind of late, but the direction that we're going, because I believe Dr. Botel instructed staff to kind of take a look at a few other things, but also giving our opinions about what direction we should be going with this budget.
Yeah, we can certainly request the information and see how fast we can get it from other municipalities. So it may be something that we'll try to get it for the discussion on Monday, but you also have an opportunity to maybe even discuss it at first reading of the budget. Or if there was modifications that the board choose to make with respect to that at any time during the year, you can also make those changes as well. So it's not something that, we want to make sure we give you the entire picture versus rushing something and we make that decision that's going to have an impact.
Yes, ma'am.
And one last, I'm sorry.
Yes, Madam Chair, so just to kind of just be clear on record that I'm kind of in line with Councilman McCoy in regards to the time and effort that we're putting in. The budgets and the concerns that we've talked about with previous council has been addressed in detail because of the direction the city was going. I think we're going in a very positive direction. I think that everybody's putting a lot of effort as a team to get things done. So to try to cut down on the budget within the legislation is going to be difficult based on the time and effort we've put in just in these 5 months. So I think we can have the discussion as colleagues to talk about it. So I want to make sure that we do address it, not just kind of put it under the rug.
Certainly.
Well, I cut my budget last time, so I don't have much discussion to have, and I don't have an assistant, and I get it. Everybody has their, everybody puts in their various amount of time. Everyone utilizes their aides or in different ways, so I'm sure we all have differing opinions on it. I know that I came from a council where it was an issue. So, I may have a different perspective on it, but we do have that flexibility to individually cut our budgets. We do have that flexibility to increase it if we vote to do that. So, at the end of the day, it is up to each individual council person. So however, see fit, that's how we can move.
I think that we need to workshop it. I think that we need to have some discussion about it. I think that I agree with Mr. McCoy in that this is a totally different council here. The involvement that we have with the city is totally different from previous boards. This is the best board that the city's ever had. So we need to look at the legislative budget in terms of how we're going to move this city forward ourselves. We have to do the work. So we need to be able to look at that to ensure that we have all our bases covered.
All right, so we'll finish this conversation on Monday. And anyone else? Any comments, concerns? All right, thank you. We stand adjourned.